and we'll go from there. All right. So welcome, everybody. This is the October meeting of the Nevada County Camera Club. Glad to see you all, given all the power outages and rain and everything. I'm glad to see so many folks are doing okay. So we are recording, just a disclaimer, and just like just happened, is if there is background noise, I will mute you. Kathy may mute you as well, just to keep the recording as clean as possible. And if you do need to speak, just as I said, hold down your space bar. So, all right. And the idea is we're going to record this. And if there's newer members here, this will be available on the club's website in a few days. So, all right, just a few announcements on my end, starting with just a reminder, every month returning to in-person meetings. So we are staying on Zoom through the end of this year, and the board is working on potential strategies that we could come back together in 2022. So, but next month, November, will be our last meeting for this year. It will be on Zoom, and then we take the month of December off and then come back together in January. So stay tuned. I'll send out an email with information about the January meeting and whether it will be on Zoom or in person. But you know, I, for one, we're hoping to be able to get back together, even if on a limited basis. So more to come on that one. And then a very exciting thing for me, and hopefully for you too, is that there is a big event. It's called Photography Month 2022. It was held in 2018, kind of held in 2020. It's every other year. So the next one coming up is April of 2022. And what it is the 5-county celebration of photography. So the idea is there's events, there's activities, there's exhibitions, art walks, hosted by, could be organizations, galleries, businesses. And the idea is there's a website, and all those events will be posted on the website so that people can go explore art and particularly photography across a 5-county region. So we talked about it at the board and agreed that we as a club would like to participate in Photography Month 2022. Nevada County's not really been on the map for this event in years past, so we're going to put us on the map. And we've been very lucky in that the Center for the Arts in Grass Valley, they have a beautiful gallery called the Granucci Gallery. I'd not seen it, and I went to see it recently, and it is stunning. It is gorgeous, recently renovated. Due to a couple of things happening, they have offered it to us, our club, to do a exhibition, which happens to fall right in Photography Month. So they are offering us the Granucci Gallery for a March-April exhibition. So very excited about that. And we have a committee that's working on it, and there'll be more information coming out. But what we believe we'll do is have a member showcase. So members will be able to submit what they consider their very best work for inclusion in this show at the Center for the Arts. So very excited about that, and look for emails in the coming weeks with more details. So, all right. And then I'm going to pitch it to Ellen. She's got information on exhibitions as well. Ellen, are you with us?
I am. Okay. So at the frame shop at the Nevada City Picture Framing and Restoration, so we just submitted a call for art for winter and winter holidays. So, you know, images about winter and celebrating the holidays, and that should have gone out via email. So we're accepting submissions for that show. That will be up for December and January. And then after that, you know, coordinating with all the events that are going to be happening for Photography Month, I'm working on hammering out dates for having a few selected artists feature their work at the gallery, the frame shop. So probably 2, 3 showing a small body of work. So there will be details on that coming up, and when we get, you'll know when we know. So, all right, back to you, Rachel.
Okay, thanks, Ellen. Next up is we have the club is hosting its annual November workshop, which will be a week from next Saturday, around 9 to 4. We have a great variety of workshops There'll be 8 of them. There'll be 2 per hour, basically. So in track 1, there's 4 workshops. In track 2, there's 4 workshops. And so I will send out more details on that and how you log in to those. I'll send out a reminder anyway. So I'm hoping as many people as possible can take advantage. It will be our own club members teaching these workshops, and quite a nice variety. So I'll send some out in the next few days. So please join us. You don't need to sign up. There's no fee. All this experience and is all free as a member of the club. So, and you just, anyway, just click the Zoom link on a week from Saturday and join us, please. All right, so let's see. That's all the announcements that I have. So I'm going to move to Mark, membership.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see, in terms of guests, do we have any guests with us tonight? If you could hit your space bar and unmute and let me know that you're here.
They have to hold it down.
Yeah, you have to hold your space bar down. Any guests this evening? Actually, don't see any. Okay. All right, I guess we don't have any guests tonight. That's very unusual for us. In terms of new members, we have.
Just so you know, I just held down my space bar to see if the mute symbol disappeared, and it did not. So you apparently don't have unmuting with the space bar enabled.
We hear you.
I just clicked it.
Oh,
Oh,
Okay.
good to know.
Now,
good
let
to
me
know. I don't, okay.
let me call.
Works for me.
Let me call one more time then. Any guests this evening, then unclick your mute button and let me know you're here. Okay, sounds like none. We do have 4 new members since we last met. And first one is Brad Oliver. Brad, are you here tonight? If you could unmute by clicking the microphone icon on the bottom left. I don't think Brad is here. The second one is Coulter Adams, and I think Coulter is here tonight.
Oh, yeah.
Coulter, could you unmute?
I am here.
Great.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, welcome to the club. Welcome, welcome. Just real briefly, if you could just give us 30 seconds on what you do in the photography world so we can get to know you a little bit.
Wow, 30 seconds sounds like a long time. Let's see. Just been a hobbyist for several decades and wanting to step up my work a bit. Focused primarily on travel. I've been fortunate enough to do a great deal of travel in my life over a number of decades, and landscapes in particular is something that speaks to me. And yeah, what else? I don't know what else I can share. Yeah.
Thank you. You're in a good spot. Obviously, if you've seen the work of the club, you've seen a lot of what you're talking about. So you're in a great spot from the standpoint of being amongst people that like to do travel and landscape.
Yeah.
And I will be running a new member orientation meeting within the next month or so. So keep your email eyes peeled for that. And I'll run about a 1-hour Zoom meeting to kind of bring the new members up to speed. So keep an eye out for that, all of you new members. So thanks, Coulter, and welcome to the organization. If you have any questions about what we do, how we do it, my name is under membership on the website. Please feel free to email me.
Will do.
Let's see, next up is Michelle Marshall. Michelle, are you with us tonight? I don't see her. Okay. And lastly, Grace Farrah. Grace, I think you're here, right?
Hi, yes, I am here. How's it
There
going?
you are. Welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Is this the first meeting, or I think you attended as a guest, didn't you?
Yeah, I attended as a guest last time and then joined. So
Hey,
Yeah, you want to give us just your thumbnail sketch of what you do in photography?
sure. I mean, I'm just a hobbyist. I've been kind of doing it for just the last couple of years, so I still feel very much like I'm learning and trying different things. I've done mostly just kind of a lot of landscapes and I just shoot whatever's around. Like, so landscapes, sometimes there's people and events and things that I go to. I just take the camera and just try. So that's what I do.
That's great. Well, welcome to the club, to both of you.
One question
And-
for Grace, Mark.
Yeah.
Grace, how do you say your last name?
Oh, it's Farag.
Derek, just how it sounds.
Yeah, I mean, people say Farag. I would answer to that too. It's no big deal. but yeah, Farag.
All right, thank you.
So again, yeah, both of you keep a lookout for the new member orientation. If you have any questions, give me a shout on the website. And that's it for this evening. We're at 149 members, just for everyone's edification. We keep getting a continuous stream, so almost 150, which is right up there. We usually finish the year at about 150, low 150s. So COVID has not affected us at all. So it's a testimony to the group, really. Just good work, everybody. So Rachel, back to you.
I'd like to see us all together at one time.
Yeah. Well, January, huh?
All right, thank you, Mark. And welcome to the new folks. It's very nice to see you and hope to see you in person sooner rather than later. Let's see, next up, I'm guessing David Wong. Did you want to share update on the elections for next year?
Okay, so I've been talking to a few people, and so we're announcing who we have as a slate for the board, and this is just for the board members. We have people that additionally serve in committee spots, but I'm just trying to get, we're trying to twist arms. So we have 4 positions: president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer, the 4 board positions. And we have, so far, Rachel is going to run again for president. Kathy will run again for vice president. And I believe Laura Greenman said she would run for secretary, but I haven't been able to find anybody that wants to run for treasurer. Now, we can obviously, you can all raise your hand or let me know if you want to run for any of those spots. You're all welcome to, but we are missing Mike is termed out for treasurer, so he cannot do it for another year. It's a 2-year limit. If I didn't get a chance to talk to Laura, if she wants to run for treasurer, I'll run for secretary. Otherwise, Laura is running for secretary. We need, other people to step up. So that's the slate so far. And the next meeting in November, we will vote. So that's what we have so far. If you would like to run for any of those positions, I know Rachel has done a great job. Kathy's done a great job, as well as Mike and Dave Connell. So if you want to do any of those positions, let me know and we'll put you on the slate for voting for the next month's meeting in November.
And can I add something, David, is like folks have questions about what those jobs entail, say feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about those jobs. Yeah,
we can tell you all about the pay scale for those jobs.
Right.
And
career ladder, the pay scale. Yeah.
The vacation, the retirement, and all that stuff.
Benefits.
Yeah.
Hell, yeah.
The wine parties.
That's closer to the truth there. Yeah.
So the club runs so well because of the volunteers. So we'd encourage you, if you'd like to participate in the board. It is a lot of fun, and we do get. This is I know a lot of the clubs in the Sacramento area, and this is the best club of them all because of all of the people that help to run it. We are the largest club in the area, and I think I maybe a little biased, but I think we're the best. Anyway,
I second that.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
George
All
says-
right. So thank you to David serving as our nominations committee chair. So thank you to you for the work you're doing putting the elections together. All right, we have a couple more announcements and then I'll throw it open to the group. I know Dave Arstein said he had something he'd like to share. So welcome, Dave.
Here I am.
There
Thank
you
you.
are.
Banner Mountain Artisans, which is a show that we do annually the weekend before Thanksgiving at the Elks Lodge in Nevada City. That would be the 20th and 21st this year. We're back this year. We had no show last year. Joining us this year are Janice Rossner and Bill Wages. So two of our members will be part of Banner Mountain Artisans. Everybody come by, walk around, say hi, maybe even buy something, you know. Lots of nice stuff there available for holiday gift giving. So you can see all the artists on our website. It's bannermountainartisans.com. And that's it.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
All right, and I think Craig had a quick announcement as well.
On here,
Hi.
Where are you, Craig?
trying to get the start video. There we go.
There you are.
Yeah, so Deer Creek Falls is just thundering down the canyon, high water from the storm. And I was wondering if any of the photographers wanted to come out tomorrow during the day, maybe set a time before the water drops down to a low level. So I'm just putting that out there. My number is 530-305-8653. And we're out here. I have a trail, goes right down to Deer Creek Falls. So
Okay.
So Craig, is it as slippery as it was before, or have you modified that trail?
well, it's, after this storm, there's water everywhere. So
Yeah,
Big falls.
I would definitely wear hiking boots, hiking stick, and just take care. I'll take people down and show them the best route. And we were down there today looking at it, and it's pretty spectacular. So I know there was an interest before, especially with high water. So yeah, if you're adventurous and have your camera, welcome to come out.
I'm sorry, what's that number again?
530-305-8653.
Okay.
Craig,
Thank
you're
you.
down off of Pleasant Valley Road and 20 right
It's
there.
Bittany Springs Road
Whitney Springs. Oh,
on Lone Lobo.
I just put his telephone number in the chat.
There you
okay.
go.
Okay. And also just for future reference, all the members' phone numbers and emails are available on the club's website. There is a member directory there. So if you didn't catch it, you can always look him up on the website.
And the image behind me is of the Cascade. There's three separate sections. There's a cascade of pools. Then there's an overlook where you look up and down the canyon. And then there's a steeper hike down to view the falls. So it's some of you have been there already and can relate to what I'm trying to explain. But it's a hike.
it's well worth it, everybody. If you haven't been to Craig's and seen Deer Creek back there, it's really quite spectacular.
That's great. Thanks for offering that.
Yeah,
Sure.
very generous. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah, I'll be around tomorrow. So you just
Okay.
let me know.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, so let me throw it open. Any other announcements tonight?
I'll make my normal announcement. We're half full for Costa Rica for next July now. So I have 5 more slots. If anyone would like to join us, there's a number of us from the Camera Club that will be going down there, and let me know if you're interested. It's Josh Miller and myself.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, all is quiet. All right. That concludes the initial announcement. So I will turn it over to Kathy for the presentation.
All righty. Thank you, Rachel.
Mhm.
Good to see everybody here. So tonight we have a special treat with us, and despite, this is like the postman's duty, despite rain, sleet, snow, and hail, Tom Quinn has been able to make it, even though his power is out. They jury-rigged Michael's van and got power going, so Tom could give his presentation tonight. So hooray for you guys, amazing. And so just a brief bio that Tom shared with me, and he'll probably tell you a lot more. After 35 years with the US Forest Service, Tom retired 5 years ago. He enjoys spending time simply walking with a camera and keeping his eyes open to just pick what he can. He's a strong advocate of the philosophy of Dorothea Lange, a major figure in 20th century photography, who suggested that a camera is an instrument that teaches people how to see without a camera. This mantra has sometimes led to walks which are not entirely aerobic, often to the frustration of Tom's Labrador retriever. As much as he enjoys traveling photography, great architecture, wildlife in a natural setting, he finds satisfaction in seeking out overlooked beauty near his home, primarily along the Cascade Canal above Nevada City. Perhaps, he says, in part due to his education and many years of experience as a natural resources manager, he's particularly fascinated exploring the art of nature, and lately with a focus on nature as on an abstract artist. So he also questions the nature of art, especially as applied to photography. Exactly what makes photograph transcend the simple capture of a pretty or unusual scene into the world of art. So I could go on, but I'm going to let Tom take over from here, and he will explain his philosophy and share his photography. Thank you, Tom, so much for sharing with us tonight.
Hi. This is fascinating, and I'm somebody who's given a lot of lectures to large auditoriums as well as presentation. Natural resource people,
Tom,
and
yeah.
Tom, can you stop for a sec? Is there any way that you can connect by telephone with your voice? Because we're getting a robot sound. We can't understand you.
So we did understand Michael earlier this evening.
Yeah, I'm wondering why the change.
That's usually due to limited bandwidth. Maybe he can shut down anything else on his computer that's using internet.
I think he's only using his program because, as I said, they are being powered by van power. Did he just sign off? Is he going to try and sign on again?
Let me look.
Might
Yeah.
be worth a try.
Yeah, I don't see him now.
Okay, he probably will be signing on again. So meanwhile, I can tell you more about what Tom shared with us. And when he gets back on, he can take over. So let me know when he's back on.
Okay.
Kathy,
Yeah.
you know, I'm just down the hill from Tom. And so I might give him a call, because if he wanted to run down here real fast, maybe that would be an option.
He can't, because he doesn't have his program on a flash drive. It's on his computer. I offered that too.
Okay.
They still have their powers out until tomorrow, he said.
Okay.
So thanks for the offer. And I don't think he's portable. That's the problem.
Yeah, he's not.
Okay. All right. Just checking. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So let me go back to what he wrote here. Exactly what makes a photograph transcend a simple capture? The question made all the more complex today with the ability to manipulate or even completely fabricate an image digitally. He's seen many examples of digitally created images, which he believes clearly qualify as art. But that said, it isn't just where his heart lies. The photographs that he seeks are primarily found in nature, with the possible adjustment in the digital darkroom to either recreate the scene as his eye saw it, but the camera failed to capture, or in some cases, to enhance the scene to the potential it may have had under different lighting conditions. In most cases, he avoids intentional oversaturation of color, but adjustments in clarity, contrast, and highlights may sometimes alter color, hue, and intensity. And he also loves black and white images. They remain a passion. So that is his full statement. And is he able to connect yet?
I see a Will Quinn, but not the Tom Quinn that he had before. I don't know who Will Quinn is.
Will is one of his sons.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. I am one of Tom's sons, and
Oh,
sorry, I
Hi,
don't know. if he's
Will.
able to-
Hello there.
Hi, everybody. Yeah,
Are
I
you-
don't know if has been able to connect yet or not. They've been having power outages over there, and it sounded
Yeah.
like they had figured it out, but
Yeah. Oh, so you guys aren't in the same location. You're in different
we're
locations.
not. No,
Okay.
I'm actually down in Penn Valley.
Gotcha.
Oh, darn.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to his presentation.
Yeah, for sure. This would be the interpretive dance part, Kathy?
Yeah.
Kathy,
Yes.
Yeah.
Kathy, if we have too much of a problem, maybe we can flip our thing tonight and do the photos first. And
That's
then
what I was
we can
thinking.
figure a
Good
suitable
idea.
location that Tom could come to, either to Ann. I mean, you're welcome. He's welcome to come to my place, because I've got tons of bandwidth.
Yeah,
so
I
we-
just, maybe somebody can call.
While you do, I'll call him.
Okay, let's do
All
that.
right.
And I think you're right. I was just thinking about flipping the program, David. Thank you. Maybe Rachel, you can talk with Tom about that will let him solve it and put him on after, if that's okay with him. All right, then let's do that. Let's go ahead and flip. And Ellen and Ingrid, Ellen Davis and Ingrid Lockhart are our critiquers tonight. And we need to especially thank them, as Ingrid is a first timer. So Ingrid and Ellen, would you unmute, please?
Kathy,
Yes.
there may be an option if you have a Dropbox account to have Tom upload his program to Dropbox, and then you will download it to your computer.
Yeah, and we could have done that. He again doesn't have power, and I'm not sure what's going on with.
Can you guys hear us?
Oh, yay! There they are.
We're
Yes, we
frantically
can.
trying.
I'm close. We're here.
We're trying Plan B and Plan C, and Michael's pulled something off.
Michael, you are amazing.
Give me 30 seconds and we'll be ready to go.
Okay, because otherwise we can flip the program and put the critique first. If that
No,
helps.
this is good. I'll be ready in 30 seconds.
Wonderful.
How do we sound?
Sound wonderful. Great.
Good.
Much better than the robot voice we had.
I'd love to see his setup with the car battery running the computer. So,
Take pictures.
yeah. I'm
We
impressed.
can't run the camera. We can't run the camera because it'll use more power. We're
I see.
restricting wattage as much as possible.
And data.
Okay.
I'm running off a hotspot. It was interesting. It worked great for an hour.
Yeah, I
And,
wondered about that.
Can you re-enable screen sharing for me?
Yes, you are Sue. Where are you? Here you are. Okay. Yes, there you go.
Like I said, through rain, snow, and sleet.
Ah, looky there. Yay.
Woo! All right. All right, it's yours, Tom.
Take two. Well, now it's even more true what I was saying. And can you hear me properly now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And what I was saying was how intimidating this is. Even you're talking to someone who's given many college lectures to full auditoriums and also large groups of people. But something about talking to this group, I think I found it's more intimidating over the computer than in person, which is odd. But most intimidating is the fact that you're all great photographers, and this is a bit humbling for me to be in a position to do this. But here we go. Just you heard a little bit of bio. I'll just touch on a little bit more. I was definitely brought up in kind of an urban environment. Went to high school in Newark, New Jersey. And this true story, the best source of nature close to my home was a cemetery that wasn't too far away. So if you wanted to do a little bird watching or take some nature photographs, the cemetery was the best place to go. About 45 years ago, I took the bus into Manhattan, which you could see from my parents' home. Went to 47th Street Photo in Manhattan and purchased my first single lens reflex camera, a Canon FTB, for those of you who were on a tighter budget back in those days. I used that camera almost exclusively for over 25 years till it started getting a little wonky on me. And I was a little relatively late to the adopting to the digital world. I had a Sony point and shoot that actually was a really good lens on that camera for several years, and took the plunge and got another digital camera a few years back. Took a black and white processing class in college, photography class, processing photographs, printing photographs. That really got me hooked on photography even more so. And then, as Rachel or Kathy said, 35 years with the Forest Service. Sue and I have lived in 8 states. Lots of diversity among those states in landscapes and flora and fauna, and obviously lots of photos of those places over the years. So why a presentation in my own backyard? I got to say that, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, I don't think it will, but an episode took place soon after I joined the club that kind of provided the impetus for this some time ago, 3 or 4 years ago. There was a guest presenter giving a slideshow on a trip that she did to Africa, one of those photo safaris. Some of you would remember that. It was probably, boy, I joined 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember when it was. And it was an okay slide presentation. To be frank, I think some of the club members, Barbara Summers and Sylvester's and others who have been on some of those African trips have taken, I think, far superior photos to the ones that were presented that night. But what really struck me of that presentation was a statement, and I wrote it down at the time, and maybe I was being overly sensitive, but it struck me, and here it is, virtually verbatim. She said, "It is on a trip like this one that one really learns how to become a photographer." I thought that was interesting. I guess I could easily make the case that is attempting to capture compelling images near home in your own backyard that really challenges you to develop as a photographer, at least as much as on a photo safari in Africa. Originally, I was planning on just doing a relatively small number of photos today and going into detail on some of the processes that I use and maybe trying to develop those photographs into something more interesting. But that felt more like appropriate in a workshop setting. So rather than just do a few, I actually have quite a few photos, some of which I'm going to move through really quickly. And at the beginning, a few that we're going to spend a little more time on. So with that, all of the images you'll be seeing tonight have been taken along or in close proximity to the Cascade Canal on Banner Mountain outside Nevada City. And they are quite literally taken in my own backyard as the canal and the trail that follows the canal cross our house lot at the bottom of our lot. The NID has an easement to cross there. Today, I will share a number of photographs that in some small way try to capture the art of nature that I have seen in that backyard. In addition to us talking about the art of nature, which is pretty self-explanatory, I found myself dwelling a bit upon the nature of art. At first, you think that just sounds like sort of a clever transposition of the words, but it's something I've thought about quite a bit over the years. And as I started putting this presentation together called The Art of Nature, I had to keep coming back to, well, what does that mean? Why is the photograph in nature art? When is nature the artist? When is the photographer somehow contributing to that being art? And I bet a bunch of you have wrestled on this over the years. For those of you who've been in photography for quite a while, are we doing art? Are we just capturing really what's out there, in which case nature is the artist? And now in this digital era where we do quite a bit of manipulation of various kinds, where is that line? So we'll be talking about the art of nature along the Cascade Canal. We're also going to talk a little more philosophically about the nature of art. As we do this, I'd like you guys to do a little audience participation. Just some things to consider when I show some photographs and we talk a bit about them. First one's pretty self-explanatory. Is it a nature photo? Second one, is it a natural photo? And we'll talk about that in a moment, the distinction between 1 and 2. And then the big one, I guess, is it art, quote unquote? So is it a nature photo? I think it's fair to say that a fair number of folks in this club consider themselves to be primarily nature photographers. In fact, I think the survey that was done of membership asking what are your favorite types of photography, that was a large number of you. I actually think it used to be more easily defined what it means to be a nature photographer. I think a bit less clear in the digital era we find ourselves. But the other question I'll be talking about tonight a bit with some photographs is the influence, the extent to which man's influence or man's presence on a photo takes it out of the nature category, where it's no longer a nature photograph. For example, I belong to a Facebook nature photo group that actually disallows any sign of man, even a very distant, obscure wooden fence, if it's visible. It seems a bit ridiculous to me. Man is part of the natural environment as well, of course. But there are some who interpret that in a very strict manner, what it means to be a nature photograph. But where is that line? The photo that you have in front of you there, is it a nature photo? I'll show again later. And it happens to be a leaf that just happened to get plastered after a rainstorm on an NID pipe. And there's something about it I find artistic. And yet, is it a nature photo? I'm not sure. Is it a natural photo? Okay, so maybe we can decide what's a nature photo easily enough. But now, and I'm sure natural isn't even quite the right word, but it's the one I came up with here. The issue here is just how much digital manipulation is appropriate while still considering a photo to be quote unquote natural. I think this is particularly apropos to our club's monthly categories, most of which are said to not permit digital manipulation to the point where they quote, misrepresent the true situation. Just where is that line between appropriately edited versus manipulated beyond that which is quote unquote natural? This photo that I chose for this slide is just a teaser on this question. Just FYI, the only adjustments made to this image were upping the contrast and really relatively modest increase in the saturation. Otherwise, it's pretty much as seen. But just those relatively modest adjustments in sliders of contrast and saturation, creates somewhat of an otherworldly feel. It always looks to me like an asteroid coming through a hole in a space canopy or something with galaxies and whatnot. Related to this, how many photos have you guys looked at and had an immediate reaction upon seeing it of wow? It was one of those visceral wow photos. And I wonder how many of those would have been even possible in a pre-digital era. Do many of the photos that we now elicit a wow from us, is it in partly because of the ability to manipulate those photos digitally? And are they still eligible for all of our photo club categories, which again, do not permit digital manipulation to the point where they misrepresent the true situation? Related to this issue, this is just a little tangent here. Does staging matter? For the record, this photo here, which some of you have seen before, a few of these photos will be familiar to you. This photo is not in any way staged. I have heard it suggested that it was. But the true story here is I walked outside my house on a rainy morning to walk the dog, and there was this perfect camellia knocked off of its bush by the wind and rain, lying just like that among dead camellia flowers. Those are those prune-like shriveled things around it, and the dried leaves around it. The juxtaposition of this really perfect, beautiful red flower against the decaying death is somehow somewhat jarring. In fact, I had this print hanging in my house for a while, and Ann Westling, I hope you don't mind saying this, Ann, you're on. Ann Westling was over our house for dinner, and this picture's on the wall. She told me she found something about it disturbing. That was the word. It's interesting. So does a pretty flower picture transcend the genre of pretty flower pictures and become quote unquote art if folks find it disturbing? That's an interesting question. Back to the staging issue. If this photo was somehow less than natural, if I did place it there, if I plucked it off a bush and placed it there, if the water droplets were sprayed on rather than natural, would that have made any difference? Would it be any less natural? I'm not actually sure of the answer to that, but for me, the answer somehow is definitely yes. If I had taken this photograph, if I had staged it, placed it there, sprayed water on it, it wouldn't have the same feeling for me. I probably wouldn't even have, no, I probably wouldn't have had it printed. I probably wouldn't even like it all that much. But the fact that I saw it, that it was not staged, the final image is the same. If it was hanging in a gallery or hanging in your home, you wouldn't know the difference. But for me, the photographer, somehow that made a difference. Now the big question, is it art? So A, is it nature? Is it a nature photograph? B, is it natural? Has it been manipulated beyond what is natural? And now the big one, I guess, is it art? And in Charles Needle's presentation, not too long ago, some of you may remember that he suggested by following some of his photo manipulation methodologies, and this is a quote, I tried to take some direct quotes, so I'm not paraphrasing. He said, quote unquote, you could take your photographic art to the next level. And if you may remember, those were some pretty, I guess call them sophisticated, but we'll call them dramatic digital manipulations that Charles was involved with. To imply that that is taking your photographic art to the next level, I took some difference of opinion on that. I guess I would argue that it's taking your photography, your graphic art perhaps, to a different place or a different level, not necessarily the next level. So when have we crossed that line between nature as art and art that we have personally created through technology? Back to the big, essentially unanswerable question, though, for any photograph for me, is it art? Is that question really so subjective as to simply be in the eye of the beholder? Or are there possibly more objective standards of what is art in photography or art in general? Have you ever had somebody look at one of your photos or perhaps another person's photos and said something like, ooh, that's so artsy? And sometimes it almost sounds like a derogatory term. It's kind of funny. So is there a difference between being artsy and art? And I guess pushing this point just a little bit further, you'll sometimes see folks label themselves, professionals and otherwise, as quote unquote, fine art photographers. I find that interesting. So not only are their photos art, but somehow they've made the leap to quote unquote fine art. So can you be a fine art photographer if your images are heavily dependent on digital manipulation? Nowadays, I wonder if you can be a fine art photographer if your images are not heavily a function of such manipulation. So that's the bulk of my soapbox oratory. Now we're going to move into a little bit more of a slideshow, and some of these questions that I've raised will be a recurring theme. Kathy, in her introduction, mentioned that my favorite quote, perhaps in photography quote, is this one attributed, or one that Dorothea Lange gave. A camera is an instrument that teaches people how to see without a camera. I think this is particularly true when you're trying to put together a slideshow kicking in your own backyard. If you are on African photo safari and you're in the back of a truck and there's the animals and somebody's pointing out the animals and you're all pulling out your telephotos and you're all taking pictures, I'm not sure just quite how much this quote pertains in that setting. But if you're out for a walk with your dog or anywhere on the trail or in your backyard or down the street in your hometown, I really believe that over the years, if you've had a camera with you and you've looked at what seems to be a photograph, particularly one that maybe can be transcends the genre into art, that really it teaches you how to see without a camera. And I'll be touching on that a bit later as well. So let's talk about a couple of specific photos. This is a photo here. It was just taken on the trail. Late fall, probably one of the first frosts of winter. I had this photo printed. I like it. It's hanging in my kitchen. It feels quote unquote artsy to me. And what's more, it has, I've heard it feels that way to some others that have viewed it. To me, it's a perfect example of some personal growth for me as a photographer. As someone who's spent a lot of time in the biological sciences, I traditionally tried to capture nature images with a technical accuracy as my primary focus. And often my default edits, I never use preset edits, but my default edits I found might be typically on a raw file to increase contrast a bit, increase sharpness, clarity, generally try to capture colors as accurately as possible, but make them pop a bit. This photo you see here and some others I'll share are a departure from that approach. Exactly how? This photo is essentially the same image. It's just a slightly different crop than the previous one. And I would say this is how I probably would have photographed and processed this scene generally in the past. Here they are side by side. Actually, this is the raw file on the left. It's not even the previous, it's the exact same photograph side by side. And the raw files, those of you who shoot raw, you generally know a lot of these photos come out dark, so it hasn't been adjusted at all, so it is dark. But I think you can get a sense of kind of what it looked like. So rather than process that like the previous photo that I showed you, what I've done here is greatly decreased, and I hope you can see the sliders for the Lightroom sliders on the side. For those of you who have a small screen, you may not be able to see them. But I included a screenshot here of the raw image and the processed image and the sliders from Lightroom. And what I did here was greatly decrease the clarity. I greatly decreased the dehaze. I upped the shadows greatly. In fact, I think I went all the way to 100 to smooth out the overall image and the sort of differentiation between the different leaves. And the color, though, is fairly close to accurate, at least as my eye perceived it that day, maybe with some subtle enhancements. So is it nature? Let's go back here. Is it nature? Back to our three questions. Well, I think undoubtedly, yes, it's nature. Is it natural? Now we're into that gray area. Think about our photo monthly categories. Is this, I don't know. Is it natural? And is it art? And now we get into that tension between is it natural, is it nature, and is it art? And sometimes do we manipulate photographs so much in the name of trying to make them feel more like art that they no longer are really natural. And that's a tension that I think I deal with regularly, and maybe some of you do as well. Here's a similar situation, a similar treatment. I've always liked this image. It's a Pacific madrone. I was walking one morning and warm morning sun was shining on this Pacific madrone trunk. And it was, I called it fresh peeled madrone because that green was pretty close to what it seemed to be that day. And that bark was just peeling. It's actually what I felt when I saw that image that morning. In actuality, this is closer. This is the same photograph. And it's probably closer to what it really looked like. I don't think that's the original raw file. I think this actually has been edited a bit. You can see it was crooked, so no big deal. I just straightened it, made it vertical. And then I played with it a bit. Fairly gentle use of the Lightroom sliders, again, including decreasing clarity rather than my default from years gone by of maybe increasing clarity and crispness and sharpness. And to me, that photo feels like art. I believe it's still nature. I also believe it's still natural. I would submit this in a flora category without much guilt. Is it art? Well, that's in the eye of the beholder. Now let's take it to some extremes just to push this point further. The photo on the left, actually it's the only one you probably see right now, is the one I have this printed on canvas and it's hanging on in our house. I like it. When I posted it on social media, many other folks seem to like it as well. It got that wow response. This is what it was closer to what it looked like. That's not even the raw file. That has been edited to some degree. So the image on the right is much closer to what the scene really looked like that misty morning. It was a warm sun shining in those rays, and I have to say what I felt when I was there was more like on the left. But what it really looked like was more on the right. And the one on the right's a pretty photograph. Are either of them art? I don't know. Is the one on the left nature? Yes, even though there's a trail in the foreground. Is it natural? Well, now we're pushing that boundary quite a bit, aren't we? Is it art? Well, to many, it feels more like art, particularly hanging in canvas on the wall, than the one on the right would look like. Here's the same image. The one on the left is actually the raw file without any editing. And you see how kind of cold and stark that looks. The one on the right, and there's your sliders on the right again, for those of you who can see them. Clarity down, dehaze up, highlights all down there. Most key though, the temperature jacked way up. It felt warm to me that morning when that sun burst out. I played with that slider, sure, beyond what I would typically do. The raw file certainly does not reflect what I felt I experienced that morning. It was probably somewhere in between. This was playing around with something to the extreme. And just before we move on, another similar example and another image that I have printed on canvas. It looks like art hanging on my wall. It gets a wow response by many that view it. This image on the right is much closer to what this scene really looked like that day. It was beautiful. Also a pretty photograph by most objective standards. Is it art? I don't know. It's natural, relatively, it's nature. The one on the left is nature. It's not natural. Is it art? I don't know. As an aside, the photo on the left should only be acceptable in our monthly club categories that permit digital modification, in my opinion. Even though all I adjusted were the basic Lightroom sliders. I didn't add, it's not a composite. I didn't add stuff. It's not our creative fantasy per se category, but I would have to submit it in that creative fantasy category. I believe it's the only category that it would fairly go in. And it would be in competition, so to speak, with those of you like Kathy and others who do some really wonderful, fully creative fantasy images. And yet all it is adjustments in Lightroom. All right, now we're going to move along much more quickly. Some time ago, when Rachel and I communicated, almost 2 years ago, I think Rachel communicated about me doing a presentation for the group. And I mentioned I'd try to do something that was just along this theme, sticking to photos on the trail. She said something to the effect of, I'd love to hear more about your anthropomorphic leaf photos. Well, to be honest, I didn't even plan on including any of these in this slideshow. A couple of years ago, I showed some of these at the group's annual series night. Some of you remember that. And I wasn't actually going to include them here, but you know what Rachel wants, Rachel gets. So very quickly, here's a couple. And here's how that series came about. This one, by the way, is called Despair. I think you can see it on the bottom. For those of you who aren't familiar with this series, it's a series I did on shriveled, dried leaves that seem to reflect anthropomorphic or human characteristics. This photo here, looking at the one on the left, was really the first photo I took kind of in this series. I noticed two dried leaves hanging and they were in some pretty bright sunlight, but they're against a very dark shadowed background. It jumped out at me, so I took the photograph. And although they don't really look like people, they somehow reminded me of two people interacting in some way. And it was actually my son, Will, who some of you are getting to know Michael, Michael's older brother, who likes black and white photography. It was Will that suggested I further darken the backgrounds to really make those sunlit leaves pop. So the final image on the right has that done to it. Not through masking, by the way. In fact, I'll be frank, I don't even know how to do masking. I've never learned. I never bothered because all I do is dodge and burn and do more traditional light darkroom type techniques when I want to darken something. But although that image is kind of nice, it didn't make the cut for the anthropomorphic leaf series, in part because I still, although it somehow reminds me of two people interacting, I don't see it enough to make the series. It's just more abstract in that sense. Just a couple of them, you know, when I'm walking on the trail, I keep an eye out for leaves that feel like they have human characteristics. Some do more than others. This one's called Walking in the Wind. I particularly love it when I find two leaves that seem to be interacting. This image was taken in a rather dark area, and all the images that I've taken here are as seen with available light, without any flash. Some require fairly long shutter speeds, so when there's even a slight breeze, full clarity is impossible. What I really like about this one, besides the two leaves seeming to interact, and this one's called The Conversation, is the very dark leaf. It looks like they're sitting on a big boulder, a big rock, having this conversation, sitting there carrying on a philosophical exchange. Maybe they're discussing the nature of art. What is art to you? This one's kind of a favorite. It's called The Kiss. Not only do they look like they're kissing, to me, it looks like they're holding hands while doing so. It's kind of romantic. And some leaves are more graceful than others. This one's called The Dancer. And that's the last one I'm going to show in this series. I've got a number more. They're actually pretty difficult to find. I haven't found any that really jump out at me in quite some time. I'm going to transition. Let's talk about macro photography for just a second. I'm not a macro photographer. Some of you probably are, I don't know. We haven't seen that many macro shots in the club in the competitions, as I remember. There's no doubt, though, that there is a certain kind of quote unquote art to be found in the minute aspects of nature. As an aside, this photo is pretty much the actual color with very little saturation. I know that's hard to believe. This is a flame skimmer dragonfly, for those of you into such things. And the pattern is amazing, as is the color. And when I made this photograph, I didn't intentionally set out to make it a macro image. In fact, here's how it happened. That previous photo is nothing more than a crop of the wings of this photo of a dragonfly. And pretty good lens, pretty good lighting, get that kind of detail, but it's those two wings on the left, cropped and tilted. And in fact, this photo is nothing more than a crop of that photo. So those wings in that first photo are a cropped image taken from this photo. I like this photo. It's a cool picture of a flame skimmer dragonfly. I don't know if it's art, but if you hung some macro images like that first one of those wings on a wall, particularly if it was a selection of macro photography, many would consider it artsy, if not art. probably less so for the actual image. So point there being, it's worth looking closely, both for art of nature when you're out there in the field taking pictures, but also worth taking a look at home as you're editing the photos to see if there's some art within the photos. I'm going to go through a couple of photos pretty quickly here just to talk about, sometimes you got to get up close and personal on these pictures, trying to look for the art in nature. I was flat on my belly for this one for a close-up of some sprouts on moss. And this one again on my belly. I just kind of love the curves on the moss sprouts. They look like they're sort of dancing, interacting with each other. And I call this group, I have 3 of them in here. I call this my Chihuly Moss series. And I did send one of these into the Camera Club Flora category, I think last year. Is it art? I don't know. But if I will say, if you saw something similar made out of glass in a gallery, Seattle or Las Vegas or somewhere where Chihuly or others are displayed, it's clearly considered art. Is it less so when it's not glass, when it's nature? And again, I didn't use a spray bottle here. This was after a heavy dew morning, and those are dewdrops clinging. And they're like translucent colored glass. And the light was, I had some backlighting there. And it actually blew me away when I saw this up close to see the beautiful colors and this translucence of these tiny little sprouts on moss. One last note on this photograph. You see the medium that this moss is growing on? That's an NID pipe. Knowing that, does it make it less of a nature photograph? Back to my Facebook group that doesn't allow anything man-made in their nature photographs. Does it make it any less natural? The fact that you now know that's growing on an NID pipe. I don't know. Nature as an abstract artist, this is particularly a fascination of mine. A lot of what I find out in nature is more of an abstract feel. This is pollen. It's pollen that blew certain times of year. As you know, we have a big pollen dump around here. This is a mud puddle on the trail. Pollen gathered in a mud puddle and was swirling around due to wind. This is the same mud puddle taken from a different angle, and a little case of pareidolia here. I did nothing to it but convert it to black and white, really no other manipulation. And there's kind of a great face, abstract face hidden in there. I'm going to zip through these, but some of you know, and I think I did a series on some of these for the series in the club 2 years ago. As far as the art of nature, which is really the title of this presentation, along and adjacent to the Cascade Canal, the core of my collection with regard to that is the amazing patterns, colors, and textures that are formed when small puddles freeze under different conditions. I'm going to move through them quickly. It's a relatively small sample of the group of ice photos that I put together, but I put this group together because it represents a bit of the wide variety to be found if you look slowly and closely as you're out walking. Note the amber eye, quote unquote, on the left side of this photograph. I took the photograph without even hardly noticing it initially because I just liked the pattern of the ice. But then I moved in closely and was amazed at the detail and similarity of that to a human eye. That particular portion of the ice is almost transparent for whatever reason. Can't explain how these things form. And the amber reddish color is mud coming from the red clay mud that's underneath this ice. And since that portion of the ice is transparent, as opposed to frosted translucence of the white, it came through with that amazing color. This thing just blows me away because it just seems so much like rods in an actual eye, and that perfect oval in the middle. It's just amazing. One of the more mind-boggling formations I came across just this past winter. Some of you have seen this as well, or a variation on it. They're not easy to photograph. You have to get into awkward positions, and this is why people walk right by these things. Back to Dorothea Lange's quote about the camera being an instrument to help ones to see without a camera. And yeah, it looks like a crystal chandelier or some sort of Victorian lampshade, or you name it. There's some wild stuff going on in there. But trying to photograph these without breaking the ice is really tricky, because you step anywhere near them and they break. And speaking of breaking, this puddle was broken and then refrozen, not broken by me. This color is pretty much natural, by the way. Folks don't believe that. Some of these puddles I come across are red clay mud puddles. And I get there the right time of day, that the morning sun is hitting them and illuminating the puddle. And the red clay that's in suspension in the ice just comes alive like this. One professional photographer suggested that I boost the contrast and color and luminance a bit on this to make it quote unquote pop more. I was reluctant to do that. Back to that, is it natural? And I did on this one a bit. So there we are. It's nature. Is it still natural now that I have boosted the color and luminance a bit? Again, not all that much. I don't know. Is it art? Yeah, it kind of has a feeling of kind of a modern art thing going on there. And the color is not essential for these ice photographs. Sometimes black and white is an option where the pattern is more essential than the color. An array of wings and ferns and feathers and shells and other natural formations is endlessly fascinating. Here, the yellow color is morning sun reflected off of an adjacent tree that had foliage of that color. In this picture, I want you to take notice of the oak leaves that are visible, the real oak leaves that are visible through the clear sections of the ice, and particularly the upper left. Then note that whitish leaf-shaped crystalline structure in the middle. That crystalline structure has nothing to do with the fact that there were real leaves present. It's just a weird, wonderful coincidence. Hanging around an image for a little while, maybe walking away and coming back as the sun angle changes. And if you move your body around just a little bit one way or another, this can happen. So here's the same image or same location. This is a while later and I came back. The sun had changed. I changed my position. And now the leaves and the reflected foliage nearby are right on the crystalline leaf image, thereby highlighting it greatly in its shape against the rest of that ice formation. That slight blue color is reflected sky, which makes the yellow reflected color on that crystalline leaf structure pop home a little more so. And you can still see some real oak leaves if you look closely through the clear ice down the lower right, actually throughout the image. So you have a leaf-like structure made by nature, by ice, over actual leaves. Sometimes ice formations are just kind of fun and seem whimsical. This one's sort of it looks like a fox to me, like some sort of cartoonish fox. The variety of ice structures and images really is infinite. And the more I look, the more I find. Occasionally, but rarely, I can capture some prismatic effects and spectrum color in the ice. Doesn't happen that often, surprisingly. This one was pretty cool. This one's got a nice boot shape. In fact, notice the wonderfully detailed quote unquote embroidery at the top of the boot. Just little ice structures going on in there. Sometimes they're like reeds. This is the actual color of a red clay mud puddle. The clay puddles are sometimes the most fascinating, not just because of the color, but for some reason, the sediments that are in suspension in these puddles seem to result in more three-dimensional crystalline patterns that raise well above the surface. I think you can see that in here. Some of these raise almost a full inch off the flat surface of the ice, creating these wild three-dimensional patterns. Shells, feathers, and ferns show up fairly commonly. This is one of the more amazing formations I've ever come across. I found this one literally on New Year's Eve of this past year. And again, I think some of you have seen a variation of this, that one. To some people, this looks like steel. And if you look really close focus on it, it does, it looks like somehow like steel. And others see it, think it's a very macro image, like I must have, like it's ice crystals in a macro, and it's not. Actually, this formation was a couple of feet across. So it was pretty mind-boggling. This one appeals to my minimalist instincts, which I like minimalist photography. For whatever reason, this puddle was milky white. I'm not even sure why. And the red clay ice crystals were emerging from the milky frozen surface. And if you have a pretty good monitor, look closely, you'll see very subtle feather and fern formations throughout the image in the background, most visible in the lower right. This photo rarely elicits a wow, and yet to me, it is as close to art as any of my nature images, but don't ask me why. This is sunlight on a mud puddle forming another wild pattern. Sometimes black and white is just the best way to bring up the detail on some of these things. This was an unusually clear, transparent frieze, looking like ice daggers raised off the surface. And then this one, you can see all the detailed leaves and rocks beneath the frozen clear surface. Wonderful patterns and shapes. Truly, nature is the artist here. The photographer is just doing his best to try to capture some of what nature has offered. It's another one showing how raised these mud puddles can be off the surface and how perfectly smooth. I think you can probably tell just how smooth those surfaces are. There's also a real wonderful color display of prismatic effect at the bottom of that photograph. And one last one in the ice series. This one just totally different. But then again, they're all different, which is what makes it so much fun. I'm really going to cruise here. I know we started a little late, so hopefully you'll have a little patience. Let's talk about flowers and foliage. Are they art? You know, who's to say? I know many of you take wonderful, wonderful flora photos. The Cascade Canal does not quite have the diversity of some areas. And it's tough to limit yourself putting together a slideshow. Sometimes I almost feel like cheating. Can I sneak in a couple of wonderful flower pictures from somewhere else? That would be cheating. What I have learned though is that the morning and evening light along the Cascade Canal provides illumination on the flowers and foliage, often against a very dark shadowed canal that is not illuminated. And many of my images are based on those ingredients. Also, dogwoods are incredible on the trail all times of year. Some of you take some wonderful dogwood photos. The Cascade Canal Trail has got some great dogwoods. In fact, they're beautiful color out there right now. But throughout the year, I just love taking some dogwood photos. There are some wild lilies growing along the canal. I pretty much know, there aren't that many of them. I pretty much know exactly where they are. And every year I track them from first emergence to last decay. And are they art? I don't know. These lilies to me look like, they feel like art. My role of trying to capture them in morning sun. Again, no flash, no artificial illumination, generally morning or evening sun, generally against very shadowed background that maybe I helped along through some burning in Lightroom. Sometimes when you take photos of flowers, in this case a lily against the stream, it's not totally black back there. Sometimes you're getting some light on the stream and you can get some interesting bokeh effect behind the flowers. Here's another example. Even the unopened lilies can have some artistic interest. Also note the spider at the top of this one, kind of added a little touch as well. More example here, evening light is shining on the canal. Typically, I try to do it when the canal is darkened, but this evening light shining on the surface of the canal added a little different perspective. And this is shooting across the canal up a steep slope on the other side. And it was evening light shining right on this cluster of lilies. And I thought, wow, that light is great. And while I was taking it with a telephoto, by the way, these two butterflies showed up, and which was another serendipity. Just happened to be shooting up there, and there they were. Light, shadow, texture, all the ingredients I think go into making flower pictures maybe transcend from just being pretty pictures of flowers to something approaching art. Sometimes there's art in the small details, even when the beauty is faded. There's still something to be said there. Even when there's nothing left of the flower. This is one of those same lilies that I take regularly after the petals are all gone. There's also some columbine found in a few places along the trail. I like the curve of the bend of the stem of this one. Sometimes there's art in the details, particularly if you can capture a little interesting background. Just another flower picture. Bugs and flowers, always a nice combo. Is it art? Probably not. It's nature, it's natural. In this case, I didn't push the envelope on the natural question. Similar. But now we get right down inside the flower. Maybe I can't remember what I did here, but I'm thinking again, it's a case of actually decreasing clarity rather than increasing and just softening the whole thing. And now it starts to get a feel a little more abstract and maybe a little more quote unquote artsy. And sometimes just capturing the details without playing around with them much are worth it in their own right. A lot of foxglove along the Cascade Canal Trail. This was some really incredible lighting that I caught one morning on a variety of St. John's wort that grows only in a couple of places that I'm aware of along the trail. Sometimes flowers in black and white can really pop. Let's move beyond flowers into foliage. Sometimes foliage can be as impressive as the flowers, particularly if caught in great light. Here's some morning light backlighting shining through these leaves. Color was just incredible. I found these leaves so fascinating that I found one on the ground. And this is one of the few cases not taken exactly, it's taken in the field, but I decided to look at both sides. So this is held up on the underside, and this is the exact same leaf just flipped over on the front side. And really beautiful detail and color, front and back. Just more foliage images. This was after a rainstorm. Leaves came off the trees, got plastered to the trail. If you haven't picked up by now, I'm a big fan of backlighting and try to catch backlighting, particularly against a very dark shadowed background. Even common subjects, and many of you are familiar with what this sort of, it's a fungus, I guess, grows on big leaf maple leaves. But capturing the details on some of these everyday objects in the right light can be worth doing. How many of you see the single oak leaf in this image? This and the next couple of photos are literally in my backyard, because you'll see this is Japanese maple leaves. So it's not down along the trail. My backyard is roughly 30 yards from the Cascade Canal Trail, so I still consider it fair game for along the Cascade Canal. But this is kind of fun. There's one oak, and again, not staged. I was out there, I was taking a picture of the maple leaves, and I said, oh, there's one oak leaf in there. This another example of reducing clarity and increasing luminance, which seems to work very well against snow, I've found. Another example of that. Just taking it from a technical image to something more approaching art. It's nature. Is it natural, We're into that gray area again. I don't know, have I pushed the boundaries of natural? I don't think so. Minimalism in flora photos is very much a passion for me. I mentioned before, I never use masking for darkening a background. I generally take my walks in the early morning light or evening light, trying to find subjects that are naturally illuminated against a dark and shadowed background. Spring dogwoods are always eye catchers. This one looks a bit like musical notes or candles, perhaps. I'm just going to move through these. That's not water drops. Those are ice crystals on the perimeter of those leaves. Backlit creating translucence there. Seed heads are wonderful to photograph. I like the curve of the two stems on this. Getting photographs of these seed heads, whether they're dandelions or Western salsify or whatever, really dependent on catching the light, a good light, the right time of day and good angle. Sometimes straight on works best. Sometimes you have to get down really low. This is sunset coming through. I'm pretty much was almost on my belly taking this photo. They're beautiful even when they're fading. Black and white works very well. The next couple of photographs are hanging in a spider web. I was really excited when I first saw this, and I have to say I've never seen it since. The leaves had just, or the seeds had just come off, so they were healthy looking, and they got caught in a web, and they just were suspended there as if I with a fast shutter speed caught them just as they were falling. Like, it looks to me like a galaxy of sorts, a galaxy of seeds. This group, that group there feels like it's pushing itself into the art category, but again, don't ask me why to articulate exactly why. Simple fading salsify, but nice form and light and has an artsy feel to it. Another low sunset shot. A couple of tree picks. I'm a forester, couldn't get by without some trees. This is actually a real interesting wet root formation. Texture and color on an old cedar. I love how the layers peeled back on that. What surprises lie under the bark of trees? Well, here's an example. I call this mole emerging from wood. And it sure looks like that. And that's the bark of I believe this was a madrone that was lying down. The bark had peeled off, and that was the image underneath. I call this Mr. Mossy Potato Head. Maybe it's modern art. Sunlight amidst falling wet snow. It was a snow shower with sunlight. Cascade Canal fog. Madrones are wonderful trees, but especially in winter, very photogenic. Sadly, many of the madrones along the Cascade Canal are dying. I caught some of these photos the day that the snow was just starting to fall off as the sun came out. It was a misty morning along the trail. I don't have much flora in here, or fauna, excuse me. I just found these guys in their positioning to be worth capturing. There's a spider web after a rain. I was taking a picture of the web at a different place and noticed this guy was in the middle of it, just adding a little surprising punch. Webs are fascinating in many respects. I mean, this is more your typical web shot, which I think is kind of cool in the morning light. But stuff like this, I find, where the webs are almost invisible, and yet they've captured things. And again, it's like you had a high-speed shutter speed and just happened to catch this leaf falling, whereas in fact, it's suspended on a web. Another example, those two seeds or flower petals, call them what you will, falling are not falling. They're suspended in a single web thread hanging from that flower. Here's a question for y'all. Is this a natural photo? It's nature. Okay, we'll all agree it's nature. Is it natural? I like to compare that question in this case to some of the Milky Way photos we see. And for those of you who are great Milky Way photographers, you'll get critics saying it doesn't really look that way. You know, what did you do to make the Milky Way look that way? It's not real. And I see this as similar, where the camera can actually expose what the eye doesn't fully see, similar to our Milky Way. All I did here was increase the saturation a bit and played with the sliders a little bit, but all that was really there. What club category would this fit in? Is it manipulated beyond that which is real? Same. This is just below my house along the trail. This is the annual worm web extravaganza that some of us experience, where those little worms create webs everywhere. If you catch it at just the right light, they're very colorful. I happen to get good light on this. And again, I played with the color just to saturate it a bit. So the camera again is exposing what the eye doesn't always fully see. Intentional camera movement. Some of you have played around with this. Some of you are very good at it. The camera can be used to create art. Is it natural? Most groups believe it is. It's all in camera. The only thing that's been done is moving the camera. This one's autumn light. Is it natural? Is it nature? Yes. Is it natural? I don't know. Is it art? Again, I don't know. It feels like art. Some folks perceive manipulated images are more artful than those that aren't manipulated. But when is it no longer the art of nature? When is it the art of the photographer? I'm going to have to wrap this up, I guess. Can I have like a few more minutes, guys?
Sure, a few more minutes till 7:30, that'd be fine.
I got a late start. All right, one more ICM there with cattails against a red clay slope. Okay, I'm going to do a couple more, and then Michael suggested perhaps I can take any questions a little bit while just showing some photos towards the end, but we'll move right along here. I did want to touch upon this category. This is it a nature photo? And I had this as my cover for the entire show. When man-made materials sort of provide the canvas for natural processes. And this is an NID pipe, and natural processes gave it this pattern. I really love it. I love the colors. A person I know called this winter in a turquoise forest. You've seen a variation on this one. This is actually the inside of a flume along the NID Canal. It looks like clouds in a dark evening sky, or fireflies flying over a dead forest. For those of you who do batik, I've heard it, people say this looks very much like batik fabric. I talked about this one earlier. Is that a nature photo? Is it less so a nature photo because there's graffiti on that pipe? And yet does it seem somehow more like art because of the juxtaposition of that leaf plastered against graffiti on a pipe? Similar. Snow and moss growing on a pipe. I just want to zip through these. This is 4 seasons along a flume that's on the canal. And lastly, we can talk a little about nature as an abstract artist. And most of what I do here is in the area of reflections. One of the fun aspects of finding compelling abstract images that often contained within that image are some standalone images contained within. This is one example. If you look at this photograph and then look at the next one, the next photograph is the bottom quarter or even less than a quarter of that first photograph. Reflections are particularly fascinating and most often considered artful by viewers. I sometimes look at this photo and wonder if I'd be proud if I had painted it, and would it be any more art if I had done so than just photographed it. Next to ice, the many reflection pictures in the canal provide seemingly endless variation. By walking the trail every day, you become familiar with changes in light and angle and intensity throughout the year. This is a favorite reflection shot. Michael suggests I open it up to questions while I continue through these reflection shots. So that is what I'm going to do. And I don't know, we can just have a couple minutes for that.
Well, there's been a lot of activity in the chat, Tom, and there have been some questions. A lot of comments have been, you know, just based on a reaction to what you said about nature and art. Donna said, I think staging matters more to the photographer than the viewer. That's when you were talking about your camellia. In the example of the rose, I think it was camellia, it must have been thrilling to see that natural arrangement for you.
Yes.
2 new messages here. Great job, Tom. Stunning images. Rachel, he says he doesn't do macro, but many images are taken quite close to the image. What lenses are you using? She wants to know.
I don't really have a macro lens per se. My usual walking around go-to is kind of a kit lens for the Nikon. It's a 24 to what is that? 24 to 120, I think. But I don't have a macro lens per se. I'm going to interrupt here. This photograph I kind of like, and it really looks like an artist's palette with colors sort of spread on the palette, ready to be applied to canvas.
So you might want to take the time to read through some of these. Not a lot of questions, but comments for sure. And compliments, terrific images. Thanks for presenting. Love to see the prints. Well done, Tom. Beautiful images, very inspiring. So everybody's really appreciating your art.
Okay, I'll just finish them up.
Or not.
I'll finish them up very quickly here. These are almost all natural, if we want to use that term, very little modification. Autumn particularly provides a wonderful time for photographing reflections in the Cascade Canal. This is a nice example. Ripples from raindrops or melting snow from overhead branches is another thing that adds interest to reflections, sometimes very abstract. I really like trying to find impressionist images. Also, it's another example of being able to find images within images. If you look at the lower left-hand portion of this photograph, this image came from there. And this is a really pretty standalone impressionist-like photograph that, excuse me, that came from the bottom of that photograph. And lastly, I'll just say you can walk by the exact same spot for 364 days and not notice something. And then one day, all of a sudden it's there. And I spotted this one day and I went back the next day to photograph it, and this was in the same location. It was amazing. And I've never seen anything like it. I was taking this photograph almost down to my belly, and a neighbor came along and she asked me what I was taking pictures of. And I showed her the raw file on my camera, which looked very much like this image. This isn't manipulated very much. When I saw her again a week later, she told me that this is almost a quote. Susan, I don't know if you're on there or not. She was thinking of sitting in tonight. Anyway, I saw her a week later. She told me she would never pass that spot again without looking and thinking about that reflection. And I thought that was pretty cool. It kind of tied back to the Dorothea Lange quote in terms of the camera making you see things and that maybe you wouldn't see otherwise. I went back 2 days later and the image was gone. I've never seen it again since. It required a perfect alignment of sun, water level in the canal, wave action, vegetation nearby, and sky. And I wrote down the date, and I'm going to go there again the same time next year and see if the conditions are the same. Just a couple more. That one looks like the rings of Saturn. This was taken the same week as those other bizarre ones. And that's it. I'm going to end with two images that were literally in my own backyard. Thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed at least some of these images and consider what you might find in your own backyard. That's it.
Thank you, Tom. That was very inspirational. You clearly have inspired a number of people to go out and to walk around their neighborhood and see if they can pay more attention to what they're walking by. And everybody thinks you should have a gallery show. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for your presentation. It was very informative and certainly stir up a number of questions. So Rachel, on to you.
All right, thank you, Tom. And I have a question for you. I'll ask you in a minute. So that ends the presentation part of our meeting tonight. And now we're going to take a short intermission. And then when you come back, I'll announce the winners of September's categories. And then we'll have the critique. So let's start back at 7:45, about 9 minutes. Stand up, stretch your legs, and I'll see you guys shortly. All righty.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks again, Tom, Will, and Michael.
Indeed. So Tom, do you have time for a question? Is he still on?
Well, I see his name. I don't know if he's
Yeah.
listening. Tom, are you still there?
He's probably thrilled that they held out. That was impressive.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, we're going to run and grab some pie.
Me too. Me too. I'll be back in a few.
All right. Stop this here. All right.
Rachel,
Yeah.
you deserve to be complimented for the programs you've been putting on.
Oh, Eva, you're very kind.
No, it's very impressive.
Well,
This was good for everyone, just the experience.
well, thank you very much for acknowledging that. But it's really a group of people. I mean, they're just, everybody contributes and they're so free with their knowledge and expertise. It's really wonderful.
No. And to see the number of people that come even on Zoom, how you're able to hold the club together and the programs.
Yeah.
No, it's very impressive.
Oh, thank you. It has been really surprisingly good transition. I mean, at first it's like, is this going to work? And now, honestly, we've talked about the board meetings. I prefer the critique on Zoom because I can see the images more clearly than I can at the church. And I have hearing issues. I hear everything that's said. So there's some parts of it on Zoom I actually think are a better experience for me anyway.
Yeah. No, but you guys have done fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you. I will pass that on to the board. Thank you. Let's see, double check in here. Oh, that's lovely.
Hi, it's Tom. I'm back again.
You're back. Nicely done, Tom.
I will just tell you that through some bizarre coincidence, within seconds of me saying my last words, all our power went completely out.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, very strange. And Michael just hooked me back up with his laptop for, I guess, I don't know if we can stick around for the rest of the meeting or not.
Yeah, a little bit.
We can stick around a little bit longer.
But the van power lasted us just enough.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. Yeah.
Well, you guys, thank you. That must have been not only to do the presentation, which is quite a feat in and of itself. I've done that. And then to have the technical issues on top is, you guys did beautifully. Couldn't even tell.
Couldn't have done it without my IT expert here, that's for sure.
If there were an award for going above and beyond, you would get it, Tom.
You get it.
Well, Michael would get it.
Michael would get it.
Well, I wanted to ask you a question because as you were talking, I was pulling up the location on my iPhone here, and I see the Cascade Canal trailhead off of Gracie Road. Is that where you're walking? Is that?
That is the most popular trailhead. The other way to access it is from the other end of the trail, which is off of Red Dog Road. And it's about 4.5 miles from Gracie Road trailhead to the Red Dog Road trailhead. We live almost exactly in the middle. So I can walk 2 miles roughly towards Gracie, or 2.5 miles roughly towards Red Dog. Mostly I walk towards Red Dog just because it's quieter, because more people come in from the Gracie side.
So if I were going to walk it, where would you suggest that I go?
Parking is much better at Gracie.
Yeah, there's a good parking lot
Oh,
there.
off of Gracie Road here. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's almost where Gracie Road intersects Banner Lava Cap Road.
Okay, I see that.
There's one area right at the intersection, and then down below, and then there's a trail that goes up to the canal.
And you're walking along, I see the little dotted line along
Yeah.
the canal. Okay.
There is another lesser known parking that I don't like folks to know about, because we like the fact that people come in from Gracie and turn around before they even get to our house often. But there's another spot. There's a trailhead, informal trailhead off of
Banner
Mountain Trail. I could send you the details on that, Rachel.
Oh, thank you.
It's a beautiful walk.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, right now with the autumn color, it's really pretty.
I hope there's some left after all the rain.
Yeah, the storm beat up the leaves pretty good, but we were out this morning and there's still lots of color out there.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I want to put the call out for mushrooms. I'm looking for mushrooms. Yeah, well, not to eat, take pictures of.
Oh.
You know, I actually had a series of fungi photographs in this show, and I said, I got to cut this thing out. So I took the fungi shots out.
So
intersection.
So if anybody wants to share some
And then take a
locations of
left on Banner Mountain Trail
mushroom
Road.
crops.
Okay.
And then right around here, there's actually a place.
I hear Ellen. All right, folks, it's 7:45 and we are going to get started.
All righty.
Kathy's back. All right.
I get the picture.
All
Oh,
right. So
I was
folks,
off
let's
mute this
see.
whole-
I'm
that
going to
whole
mute
time.
everybody. All right. So please unmute yourself. I know Ingrid and Kathy and Ellen. So thank you. All right. So we're going to welcome back. Hopefully you got a little break, something to drink. And we're going to now go to the announcement of the September category winners. For the new folks, each month you can submit your images, which will be critiqued, as you'll see here in a moment. And then after the critique, all the members have a chance to vote in 14 categories, their favorite image in that category. So these are the images that were submitted last month and the winners of each of the categories. So I'm going to share my screen with everybody. Okay, can folks see the club's homepage? Can I get a nod from somebody? You guys see that? Kathy, can she hear me?
Yes.
Nope. That's okay. Just can you see it? That's all I.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So here we
Yes,
go.
we see
The
it.
winners from September. In best assigned subject, the winner is Kathy Triolo for her image, Hard to Imagine Now. Next, best abstract, entitled Sandy Yin Yang by Tom Quinn. Best architecture, entitled Foggy Foggy Night by Ellen Davis.
Give her a pat for me too, Douglas.
Best fauna, Oops, says the sockeye, by Janice Rosner. Best flora, A Single Spray by Anne Wessling. We have a tie in natural landscape. The first one is entitled Deep in the Dolomites by Suzanne Hambleton. The second in this category, tied, is entitled Autumn Magic over South Fork of Bishop Creek by George Pelpel. Best night photography, Moonrise on Mendocino Coast by Rick Eshelman. Best people, Baby Archer, San Francisco by Shelby Cohen. Best travel, entitled Morro Bay Sunset by Kathy Triolo. Best creative fantasy in the Anything Goes category, entitled Stars Are Pollen by Eric Ingalls. Best manipulated but realistic, entitled Perseids Time Lapse over Thunder Mountain by Rick Eshelman. Best black and white other, entitled Boulder and Juniper by Eric Ingalls. Best color other, entitled Silhouette of Strength by Douglas Hooper. And that brings us back to the beginning. So congratulations to all the category winners. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll now move to the critique of the images submitted tonight. And with that, I turn it back to Kathy.
All right. Thank you, Rachel. Congratulations to all the people that won. And thank you for giving Douglas and Ellen pats. Congratulations to everybody. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. Rachel, if you'll just.
Do you not have, yeah, you should be able to do it.
Yeah. I'm just wanting to make sure that the slideshow will come up.
We have to know what Barbara's got pie too.
Yeah. You got it. Okay, I think this is what I'm gonna, oh, it's not sharing. Okay. So I have to do something different because I can't start it before I share. Let's see if this works, okay?
Okay, all right.
This is the PowerPoint one. All right, now what I want to do here is I'm going to start the slideshow. Now, do you see the small or the one large?
Small with the slides below it.
Yeah.
You're not in full screen yet.
No, I have to, let me see if I can change it. Ah, there we go. All right, how about that one?
Yes, full screen now.
Yeah, baby. All right. Okay, assigned subject is welcome to fall. And this is titled Fall Colors, Sacramento Air Show.
So I like that the photographer chose this interpretation of welcome to the fall, the literal interpretation, and I think it was really quite humorous. The composition, it's simple, but it's very effective. So the dark spot of the person is about a third of the way in, and it kind of serves as an anchor between the shapes of the chute and the flag. And I like there's a lot of repetition of repetition of curved shapes within the edge of the flag, the curve of the chute, and they just kind of appear all throughout the image, which makes a nice contrast to the straight lines of the flag, and the red is also a nice contrast to the blue. And I like the backlighting of the flag, and really, anyway.
Sorry about that. The photographer is Daniel Chaplin. This is Pemberton, BC.
So I really responded to this image because I think it's a very dramatic composition, and it also underlies like the impending crush of a northern winter. It's coming down. It's like fall is there, it's dominant, it's beautiful, but winter is up there and it's looming and it's coming down. There are a lot of strong verticals in this composition, and I like that you've got the washes that come down that connects like the top and the bottom, and then there's a very strong horizontal line created by the golden color of the trees. So my eye on the left hand frame, that it kind of draws my eye with the bright spotted leaf. I might want to like bring that down or darken that, but other than that, it's a great image.
And the maker is Michael Quinn. This is Flowing into Fall.
So there are some really lovely elements to this image. There's the flow of the water has a nice curve, and there's a nice balance of detail in the water, but still making it soft. The rock in the foreground, there's a lot of texture to contrast with the softness of the water, and I like the color of the leaves. So there is some cloning along the edges on both sides, and so I'd either want to work more with that cloning, or the other simple solution is just to crop it out. And you might want to experiment with different crops with this image. Maybe, crop down on the, into the rock and focus more in on the rock and the water and the leaves. That might be one possibility. And the rock is a little bit of a purple tone, and maybe you warm it up a bit. And I think, and you've got some great elements to work with.
Sorry, hold on. Sorry, it advanced. See, when you see the 10 seconds in the lower left, you have 10 seconds left. So it's automatically advancing. So just want everybody to know that I'm not deliberately cutting Ellen off. That's just how the timing goes. Anyway, the maker of this one was Kathy Triolo. All right, now taste the grapes.
All right. So I like the tight crop or the tight focus of this image, because those grapes have such a lush color, and there's some really beautiful textures and shapes and variation in those shapes. And I even like the crushed grapes in there, because it just kind of alludes to, its eventual fate, and that it's fall and it's going to turn itself into some wine. And so the fall leaves indicate that that's not very fall off. So I would consider taking just like a little bit off the bottom, and even getting a little bit tighter into that crop. you know, maybe bring up the exposure of the grapes just a little bit in the middle, just to kind of really draw the eye into that more.
All right, the maker is Shelby Cohen. This is Autumn in the Backyard.
So this is another type crop that really gives us a nice close-up view of some fall leaves. I like there's, you know, nice repetition of the form and the shape and the patterns. I think that's very visually pleasing. I think the crop works very well for this image. You know, on one hand, I really like that dark center, but on another, I want to bring it up just because it makes it mysterious, but I want to bring out that middle, bring it up just a touch, and then maybe put a little bit of a darker vignette around the edges. But, you know, but that's something you experiment and play with and see how it works.
Maker is John Siebert. This is Fall Wall.
All right, so these these are really bright, vivid red leaves that really, you know, kind of emphasize the fall. And I like how, you know, bright and punchy they are in contrast with the neutral gray of the worn wood. You know, there's a lot of strong verticals in this, and those are nicely broken up with some diagonal lines, the organic lines of the leaves to really kind of keep drawing your eye around the image. There are, however, if you look in really close, there's some blue haloing or fringing around the red leaves, and I'm not sure, you know, what caused that, but I would recommend going in and cleaning that up. And you know, and this is another one that would be fun to play with the crop, maybe try a square crop or something. Nice.
Okay, the photographer is Ingrid Lockhart. This is Nature's Mirror.
So I really like the subject and the color palette. There's a great variation. Whoops. Sorry, I got off track there. But I do like the square crop of this, but I like the color palette of this. It's really rich. I like the jewel tones. It's very bright and feels very fall. I do notice there's a little bit of haloing around the bottom line of the trees in the water. And I also feel that, and this is just me, but I feel like the top row of the trees could use a little more contrast, you know, kind of similar to what's reflected in the trees. And that would give the eye something to kind of rest on, you know, in the upper half of the image.
The photographer is Ed Sylvester. This is Late Harvest.
So, okay, I like the variation on this theme of the grapes. You know, it's very, the foreground is very sharp, and then the back is just kind of very soft, and you know, there's pretty good separation. I like that there's a kind of a natural arc that is kind of built into the leaves.
We're not seeing
it gives it. Sorry, what? But yeah, but it's got an arc in the leaves, and then there's a diagonal line of the vine that comes through, and that keeps the eye moving around. I like the textures and the colors and the shape of the grapes. So the bright part of the background, maybe bring that down a little bit, and that'll you know, keep the eye from pulling back into that part of the image.
And the photographer is Jeff Alstatter. Now we are leaving assigned subject and going into abstract. And the first image is A River Runs Through It.
Well, since this is my first critique, please be
welcome.
This picture had an extremely strong impact on me. I thought that it was extremely strong. The contrasting textures between the smooth water caused by the longer exposure and the textures on the, I assume that's rock coming down into the water, is very pleasing to me. I like the X composition where the stripes go diagonally, and then the water connecting to the rocks also goes diagonally. It's very strong competition. I also think that the light and dark created by the shadow between the four rock formations is excellent. And I really don't have any suggestions to improve it. Maybe there's a slight right area on the right-hand side, about halfway down, that could be darkened. That's a little distracting, but other than that, I think it's an excellent image.
And the maker is Rachel Rosenthal. This next one is Tree Blur.
This one is very impressionistic, and I love the colors on it. It's very contrasting between the green, yellow, and white. And sort of, although the colors aren't suggesting water, the general feeling of it to me looks like a waterfall of sorts. I like the repeating verticals, and I think that it definitely benefits by the lighter vignette around the edge. And overall, I think it's great abstract.
And the photographer is Bernadette Sylvester. Now we are in architecture. And the first one is Covered Bridge over Yuba.
So I was kind of intrigued by this composition because it's a little atypical, but I think it works because it has good balance. So the tree on the right is a really heavy element that kind of anchors it, and then kind of like from that general area, it's like you have the line of the shore that kind of goes down at a diagonal, the straight line of the bridge, the curved line of the bridge, and then that curved line of the bridge also mimics a curve up in the clouds. And then the curved line of the bridge, it takes you through the image down and then kind of back up along the shore, back to the root. So there's just these loops that keep kind of coming back and forth. And I also like the detail of the workers on the roof, and you can see like a little bit of progress that's being built. And so I think that makes it even more interesting. Nice work.
And the maker is Fred Claussens. This is Autumn at Berkeley Campanile.
So this clock tower has a lovely design. It's not too ornate, and but there's also a nice amount of detail, and it really makes a great subject. The exposure is really pretty good. The whites aren't blown out, and that can be really easy to do on a bright sunny day like this. I think the focus is nice and sharp. And so I feel that the evergreen tree on the left is kind of really in too much competition with the clock tower. And I was wondering if you might be able to try a different crop, maybe see what it looks like without the tree, or maybe crop a bit off the right-hand side so that the tower and the tree are kind of like a matched set. And so this one, I would probably want to go one way or the other.
And the photographer is, oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
The photographer is Jeff Alstatter. And this one is Pier Lights.
So I found this minimal approach of the street lamps or the pier lamps to be really interesting because, it's not a common subject or treatment for architecture. I think repetition of form is really a great way to create a pattern within the photo. And and then there's some variation, and so that gives a little personality. It's like I also would be curious to see how it looked, if you crop it in tighter, like maybe go with the repetition of 3 and crop in, probably, so just experiment with different crops and see how it changes the image and see how it works for you. So.
Okay. The photographer is David Wong. Now we are in the fauna category. This first image is Charlotte is early for Halloween.
When I saw this, I thought this is extremely appropriate for Halloween. It is very timely. It has a very otherworldly atmosphere to it. Looks like an alien creature landing from space, and the webs are sort of an orbit around there. And you could even think of the dust specks around as planets. I can't identify what the spider is sitting on. I found that very interesting, whether it was I just really don't know, but it is very otherworldly and almost has a feeling of a science fiction manipulation. But anyway, I find it a very interesting photo and very good for Halloween. I don't really have any, oops, sorry.
Okay. Let me get back. There you go.
I don't really have any suggestions other than, no, I really don't have any suggestions at all. I think it's.
Okay. The maker is Jonathan Beth. And this is Relaxing in the Lupin.
So this is a very sweet bear, and looking right directly at us is excellent. Obviously aware of the photographer. I love the sharp foliage in the foreground, and the fact that the bear is off to the side, I think makes this charming. The light on the face is great, and the texture of the fur around the face is excellent too. I especially love that sharp seed pod that right in front of the bear. I think that the eyes themselves could do with a little bit of sharpening, maybe a little bit of lightening on the catchlight, which is there but hardly seeable. I'm a little sad that the ears are cut off. I tried content aware fill, and it actually did a fairly good job to replace those ears if that wasn't the intention, to have him come off the screen. So, but I love this picture. I think it's great.
And the maker is Anita Duprat. This is Sandhill Reflections.
So I think that the square crop on this photo works very well. The fact that there are 3 subjects is pleasing, and the fact that there's 3 reflections that are in the picture entirely and not cut off is great. The head of the first sandhill crane is in perfect focus, and the bright red eye is beautiful. I think that tried to work a little bit, maybe increasing the texture slider on the birds, as well as reducing the highlights a little bit, would make them a little more defined, and a vignette around the edge might bring the attention in more to the birds. But they are, it was a lucky capture to get those 3 birds together and yet still defined as individual birds.
The photographer is Eleni Prusa. This is Family Outing.
It's a humorous title, but not very humorous. I think it's a great photo of these whales in their natural habitat, moving along at a nice pace. The whales themselves are in perfect focus, as is the spray, which is very attractive. And the whales, the way they're placed in the frame, gives them enough movement to, or room in the front to move forward, which I think is important. I tried to look at a few crops. One thought would be to make it more of a panorama, so that the heavy dark of the rocks up above is not quite so dominant, because it really the subject is the whales, and I think it's a great capture of them in their natural habitat.
The photographer is Michael Quinn. This is Shake, Shake, Shake.
This one is amazing to me that this was captured, and this is another charming bear. I love the way that the bear's face is in perfect focus, as well as the spray around the face, and the fact that it is circular, sort of framing the face, I think is great. The greenery on the side, I think, adds to it and balances the bear's head. It's kind of a diagonal composition, and I think that's very dynamic. There's a little bit of a stick up in the upper left that does point towards the bear as a leading line, but I think it's a little distracting towards that corner, and I would probably clone that out. But overall, I think this is an amazing capture of the action of this bear. And I'd love to know what he's thinking, why he's shaking so hard.
The maker is Janice Rossner. This is Beach Dragonfly.
So this is pretty much of a macro shot of a dragonfly, and I think he was very cooperative to let you take that photo of him. Everything is in perfect focus. The colors are very jewel-like, and I love the contrast between the dragonfly and the underlying pebbles below. The fact that it's a diagonal composition, both with the body of the dragonfly and the wings, I think is very effective. I love the texture on the wings and all of the various cracks and things that you can see in that, even the translucence of the rocks underneath. Kind of wonder, the poor guy looks like he's got some damaged wings, whether he's in good shape or not. I think it's a very, very beautiful insect, and I really like this picture.
The photographer is Lori Woodhull. This is What a Nice Morning.
So I think this was a very fortunate thing to have this beautiful fox willing to sit and pose like that. I think the fact that it's pretty much in the shade is excellent, because it doesn't create any contrasting sun shadows, which clearly it's a sunny part of the day, because you can see it on his tail. I like the diagonal composition going from the tail up to his ears, and there's good space around his body. And I love the variations in the color on the fur and the texture of the fur. I think it might help to maybe put a feathered selection around the face and increase the sliders for texture and exposure just a bit to bring the attention to the face, as well as to perhaps darken the bottom two corners, which are the one on the right especially is very bright, but he's a charming fellow. And I think I like this photo very much.
And the photographer is Bob Larimer. Next is Taking Flight into the Fog.
So this is a very, very simple composition, very minimalist, and I think that works very effectively. There's a nice layer of two layers of trees there, which the bird is sort of in the middle of the two. I might try to punch that up a little bit to make the two layers more visible. The bird is very well silhouetted against the background. Unfortunately, it's not a very sharp photo, and you can't really see the detail on the bird itself. You could just make it into a silhouette and let it be a silhouette. But the other thing I tried, which I thought, it's a personal choice, but you could flip the photo horizontally so that it reads left to right, and have him taking off towards the future as opposed to the past. But I think it's a very minimalist photo, and I like the composition of it very much.
And the photographer is Jerry Thomas. Next photo is Chasing Breakfast.
So I think that's funny that I think he's going to need more than that for breakfast. But the sharpness of the face and the eyes are excellent in this photo, and the textures are excellent. I like the horizontal composition, and the solid background in the background just sets off the bird in perfect. So it's very, very sharp and visible. There's some artifacts around the bird. It looks like a little bit of a halo, which could be eliminated in post-processing. The other thing that I noticed was the left wing looks like the sky is showing through the wing. It's blue stripes, which is a little disconcerting. It might be better to be filled in more in the color of the bird. And there's a little bit of a blue stripe on the tail, which, but the bird itself has quite a personality. And I think that the fact that you caught that insect as well as the bird is very fortuitous. And I think it's a great capture.
And the photographer is Rachel Rosenthal. And this is called Puffin on the Run.
Well, puffins, I think puffins have a personality, whether they have a personality or not, they certainly look like they have a personality just because of their attractive faces. And I think that this is a great capture of this puffin. He's in good focus, good exposure, and there's a good motion involved. I like the texture of the water around him. I think that there could be a little bit of a vignette around the edge to bring or it even could be cropped in a little bit closer, although it does have the ability to move forward, and that is good. I think that it's a great capture of this bird.
And the photographer is Anita Duprat. Next image is Lewis Woodpecker, Salmon River.
This is a square crop, and I think this works very well for this bird. The bird takes up the frame very well between the vertical, or the horizontal of the bird going forward, and the opposing diagonal of the wings is very effective. I believe that the stump on the right lower side is also a good anchor for the bird. And I love the fact that there's a insect in his mouth. That's in the colors of the underside of the bird are just gorgeous, in the as are the textures. The only suggestion I would make would maybe to darken the left-hand side of that stump just a little bit, so that it's not drawing the eye back that way. It's a great capture.
And the photographer is Brian Dunbar. Now we are in the flora category, and this is Andrew's Flowers.
So I really like this subject because it celebrates the beauty and decay, and the soft muted color palette. It creates a slightly moody and melancholy feeling, but without the angst. So there are really great textures of the fallen petals and the dried seed pods, little stick things. And I really like the little architectural detail in the background of the handle poles. So this composition is kind of a contrast. It's there's a lot of strong horizontal and vertical lines, and then the diagonal lines, and then that's softened up a bit with the petals. So it has this kind of organic chaos, that is generated by that. I do wish there was a little more room at the top and the bottom to let those breathe and see more detail of the petals. The light is really soft and muted. And with this type of subject with still life, I like that there's a lot that the photographer can control and play with and experiment with. And this is one of the subjects that'd be a lot of fun to try different angles, play with the lighting, see how, try and diffuse it even more, use a reflector to bounce some light in, onto the side. And, but I think this is a wonderful subject, and yeah, very nice.
And the maker is Patricia Levitin. Now we are in the natural landscape. And this first one is Sun Through Clouds, Acacia National Park, Maine.
So this rock in the foreground in the corner, I like how it kind of mimics the shape of the peninsula. So that kind of gives a little bit of repetition of form. And then the curvature of that rock in the foreground, it kind of draws your eye into the scene. And then and then the curve of the peninsula draws it in and back in, out to the ocean and to the detail of the clouds. And I like this perspective. It kind of gives, you get a good sense of scale, you get a good sense of place from this. And I like the contrast between the warm colors and the cool colors, the rough textures, and then the smooth texture of the water. So the upper right-hand corner is a little bit bright. You might want to bring that down or maybe clone some clouds in to kind of fill in the blue. Maybe there's a rock in the foreground that's not quite a part of the main rock, and maybe bring the brightness down a little bit. But I enjoy this image, and I think it's very nicely done.
The maker is Henry Goodman. This is Sutter Butte Sunset.
So I like the formality and the minimalist approach to this. And so if this image were printed out and displayed, I think you should print it really big, because a small print would really kind of diminish it. But a big print would really, up the drama of this. I like that the flatness of the valley is contrasted with the jutting buttes, and then that kind of connects the land with the sky. So that creates a bit of a more of a relationship there. I would also suggest trying just play around with different crops of this image, see how it looks vertical, see how it looks square. And I really, don't have much other criticisms. Right? Nice work.
The maker is Anna Woodhull. This is Mendocino Gold.
This is a very pleasing image, and when reviewing images, I saw them on my TV screen, and this was not out of place with the screensavers that would come up. There were a couple times I was like, oh no, this isn't a screensaver. This is critique photos. So I think it's a very well done photo. I like the soft colors of the sunset. It's as soft as the water, which is very flowy and misty. And then there's some, nice textural contrast. There's the hardness of the rock and the, and the bluffs in the background, and those have those warm colors to kind of contrast with the cool. It's a very nicely done image. The purple and the waves in the front, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I wonder, it's like I kind of want to see what it looks like with white, but that is entirely subjective, and I think it's a very well done image.
And the photographer is Rick Eshelman. This is Twilight at Furnace Creek Salt Flats.
So what I really responded to in this image was the repetition of form and pattern and how it plays with the sense of scale. And this kind of alludes back to Tom's presentation. The ridges in the foreground, they look like these miniature mountain ranges, and they mimic the larger mountain ranges in the background. That the patterns of nature repeat themselves no matter what the size is. Like the veins in your hands, it's not unlike, trees, the shape, the structure of a tree. But there is a lot of detail for the eye to explore in the foreground, and the way that shape in the foreground, it does lead your eye back, and you see the texture and back to the mountains. But no, then your eye comes back, and there's and that light is very lovely in the foreground. Very nice.
The photographer is George Pelpel. This is On Such a Winter Day.
All right. So the photographer was fortunate to have a day with a lot of birds. There's a lot of action going on. I like the flying action of formation of the flying birds. So, and it does, there's a nice, so all the birds in the sky and in the water, that creates a nice relationship between the two halves of the image. So one thing I might suggest, that might make this a stronger image, is to kind of crop out like a good portion of the bottom of the image, probably like right up to where there's some grass. So I don't feel that the foreground adds much to this. And I want to see, it's like, so that'll draw more of the attention onto the birds and to the sky. Maybe a little more contrast in the clouds, but that's something you can play with, and it's subjective. I do like how the clouds mimic the kind of the shape of the bushes and the trees on the horizon line. And I would also tweak the horizon line just a little bit, just to even that up. But, all right.
Photographer is Eleni Pusa. This is Ubi Hibi Crater.
So I like the drama of this image and the landscape. I mean, it's got these sweeping lines, these dramatic plunges, and that bright spot at the bottom of this. And now that I know it's a crater, it makes more sense. But I like how it's like everything's kind of drawn to this bright spot. Like there's some sort of like a lodestone, or that there's like, you know, it's where everybody's like drawn to the vortex or whatever. So it kind of creates some mysteriousness to this very strange looking land. So you know, this is the kind of like place that I'd really like to go out and explore and really, you know, check out. And so on the left-hand side, I would suggest bringing that bright area down a bit. You know, that'll keep the eye more and, you know, within the frame. And I am running out of time. And then there's also a leading line of the road. And I'd be curious to see more of that too. But very, very cool landscape.
And the photographer is Jim Sluber. This is a hidden valley in early October.
So this is a very fine example of an autumn landscape. It has a clear foreground, a middle ground, and a background. But the composition is a little atypical, and I like that. So although the grove of trees is like right in the middle of the frame, the rest of the image is really appropriately balanced. You know, that makes, you know, that center, you know, bit work. So, and then the horizon line is high and emphasizes, you know, the fall colors. And so the tall trees in the foreground, so it's a heavy element, but there's a lot of negative space to the left to balance that out. The foreground, you know, it's in the foreground, but it reaches up into the sky, which is part of the background. So it creates kind of an interesting relationship with that. The negative space leads back to the grove of trees, and then that leads your eye further into the background, into the clouds. And I like the horizontal lines of the clouds that contrast with the vertical lines of the trees. All right, nice job.
And the maker is Eric Engels. This is Yellow Springs.
There it is. So it's always interesting to me to see how a scene can be so dramatically different so quickly. And so this is a really, this is a study in contrast. So at the left, it's cool and green and, you know, a little bit softer. And then the right, it's warm and it's red orange. And then it's, you know, there's a lot of hardness to it, but it is softened by the water, you know, and, you know, the moss is on the left, that's, you know, that's fed by the water. So there is a relationship that is kind of created between the two. And then that wild color of the water, you know, that there's a little bit of green that bleeds in that. So there, you know, so it's kind of like a yin yang kind of a deal. I also do like that there's a repetition of shape. There's a triangle at the top of the waterfall, and then that whole rock structure kind of has a triangular shape as well.
And the maker is Patricia Levitin. This is Mara Sunset.
So I kind of feel that putting this image in the fauna or the color categories would have been more appropriate, just because the low horizon line really emphasizes the sky and the silhouette of the elephants, which are kind of real. They're the stars of this image to me. But for the image itself, the feeling of this image to me is really compelling. You know, the silhouette of the elephants, there's just something, you know, and the lighting, there's just something a little melancholy about it. You know, there's just like they're trying to, like maybe they're lost from the herd, or they're trying to find food or water, or it's, you know, like their environment and is changing. One technical thing I do want to mention is that there are a lot of very, very, very fine lines that are created. And I wonder if that might be from like a filter that was used. Because I know I learned the hard way when photographing the Northern Lights, if you leave a filter on, that can really put some very odd lines in there. So I don't know what caused that, but that is something to... But if it's a deliberate effect, it's, you know, that's something that could be really interesting to explore and play with. So,
And the maker is Janice Rossner. This is Table Mountain, Sunset Glow.
So I find this is an unusual landscape, and I mean, it has a clear foreground, middle ground, and background, and each takes up like a third, like a third of the image. And like the elephants, there's kind of a sadness for, to this, like there's an ending, but also maybe there's some hope in the beginnings, because there's some, there's flowers in the foreground, then they lead up to the twisted, possibly burned, wreck of a tree, which also kind of looks like a ship in this context. But there's a lot of contrast between like warm and cool colors. I actually tried this as a square crop, and I really, really liked it. So that might be something worth playing with and seeing how you like it.
I think this is David Wong. Is it right, David?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I thought that was okay. That was David Wong. This is night photography, and our first image is Under Ancient Skies.
So when I saw this image, I was just taken with it. It's just so fantastical. This building is so ancient, and so I'd love to know where it is. Although it's a night photograph and the sky, is clearly night, I think that the subject really is the building, and the night really sets it up well. The composition is great. The leading lines of the rocks in the front left and the mountain on the right leading into the building. I love the textures of the roof, and the blue door is great. I can't say anything other than I just think this is a fantastic photo and extremely successful, and congratulations to the maker.
And the maker is Rick Eshelman. This is What Rafts Do at Night.
I think the rafts look very peaceful in their bedtime mode. This is a very interesting photo. Let's put it this way. I am very impressed with anyone who makes a star track like this. I know it takes a lot of patience and a lot of technical skill to do it, and I think that's impressive. The composition is interesting and effective, with the mountains coming down to show off the rafts at the bottom. The color of the sky I found a little bit, I don't know what the word is, didn't seem real to me. I don't know if there was a city light behind there, but for the foreground to be so blue and green and the sky to be so orange, I thought is a little distracting, even if it is the way it actually looked. I don't know if the sky could be tinted a little differently or cropped down to the boats, because the boats are really interesting, and I think that the mood at the bottom is excellent, but the sky is a little bit distracting.
And the photographer is Brian Dunbar. This is Ancestral Puebloan Granary by Moonlight.
So these are extremely monolithic rocks, and I think that they reminded me of some historic or prehistoric creature. You can see an eye in the as it rises up. I think it's good that there was the title that this is a granary, that maybe that makes you understand what the light square thing in the middle there is, which I assume is light inside of the granary. I think that the diagonal composition is great. The colors and the textures of the rock are beautiful. But if I didn't have the title, I wouldn't know what I thought. Maybe that was a window, except that obviously can't be the same color as the sky. So, but it's a good composition, and I like it.
And the photographer is Chris Schiller. We're now entering the people category, and the first image is Into the Woods.
This is another square crop that I think works very well. The subject of the photo is sort of man against nature. The fact that the figure is almost in silhouette and is facing away from the photographer, makes it sort of a impersonalized person wandering off into the woods. I think it's almost a monochrome picture and could be black and white, but I think the fact that the figure is more of a blue against the brown of the trees helps to set him apart and create this kind of dichotomy between man and nature. I love the vertical lines of the trees and their definition against the snow. I think it's a minimalist composition in many ways, and I think it's very effective.
And the photographer is Bernadette Sylvester. This is Tathir.
This is a beautiful capture of this dancer and very well framed in the photo. Takes up the frame well with the arms and the legs. I love the movement of the dancer, that even though it's absolutely still and captured with absolute sharpness, you definitely feel the movement in the pants and the arms. I love the dark background, and I especially like the transition between the darkness of the lightness of the floor in the beginning and how it goes into dark in the background with just no line at all, just a smooth transition. I think it's an excellent photo. I think it captures it very well.
And the photographer is Mike Shea. This is at the Gymkhana.
I love the photo for those two girls in the front who are the subjects. It looks to me like the younger one is giving some very important piece of wisdom to the older one who doesn't seem to really care about it. I think it's a well exposed and a nice composition with the lines of the fences surrounding them. And it's in the horses in the background, et cetera, give a sense of place to it. I think that it could be cropped a little closer to eliminate some of the very bright white on the left-hand side. The real subject of the photo is the girls in the front with the horses in the back. And I think that with the way it recedes into the background is excellent. And I think there's those, I really think it captures it well.
And the photographer is Grace Farrig. This is a Greek tragedy.
Well, I can say that it definitely is a tragedy. The expression on that woman's face is extremely expressive and very well captured. The light is amazing. The coming from underneath and lighting the faces, it's excellent. The two supporting women really do add to this. I love the fact that the background is almost blank, and therefore, although it creates a sense of place, it's not distracting at all. And the details of the women and their clothes and their shadows on the material is very defined and interesting. The only suggestion I would make is to maybe clone out that line to the left that's leading into the back of her head. It really is a little distracting. And then also perhaps add a little bit of a vignette to make it even more dramatic than it already is. But it's an excellent capture of a Greek tragedy.
And the photographer is Jonathan Beth. This is Anna Ishtar.
Again, this is a wonderful picture of a dancer captured in perfect light and perfect focus. The composition is amazing. The capturing that scarf in that way, diagonal to the woman. The textures in the material are amazingly beautiful, and the color is gorgeous. I don't have anything to say about that. There's a slight white spot on the lower left-hand corner, very minor little thing, but I think it's an extremely successful picture of this dancer.
And the photographer is Mike Shea. This is Sandpiper.
I like the title. this has a very interesting mood to me. When I saw this, it seems very, very peaceful. You can almost hear the sound of the piper, the bagpipes, which I love the way they sound. Assuming this is sunset, could be sunrise, but it's a beautiful time of day and very peaceful. And the way the light is hitting the shadows on the sand, as well as creating the shadow behind him, and the way it captures or catches the waves is also beautiful. The figure is almost in silhouette, but you can see the tartan, which I think is very important. The sun flare star is in an unexpected place. I think that adds to the picture. It's almost perhaps a little humorous, although probably was not the intention, but I think it's interesting that it is where it is, and it makes this a very unique photo. But I think it's very successful. And I think centering it is fine. I think that was a good use of it.
And the photographer is Tom Quinn. Now we're in photojournalism. This first one is ready for the first light on Mobius Arch.
So I think that this tells a clear story about a photographer in the Alabama Hills photographing the Mobius Arch, which is a heavily photographed feature. And this is a perspective that I don't think I have seen in photograph before, but I think it's a really effective composition because it's kind of flat and it really brings the attention to the photographer and her relationship to what she's photographing rather than making it about a landscape. And the composition is flat, so it really keeps that focus on the photographer and the rocks. And I like that there's there's a heavy visual weight on the right-hand side with the Mobius Arch and those beautiful curving lines. And then, there's not much on the left-hand side to distract you from the view, the photographer.
And that was by George Pelpello. This next one is dual slalom racing.
So I think this is a very successful image, but I am going to say, I think, you should bring the exposure up by probably a couple of stops. And then if like any of the whites start to kind of get too bright, just bring down the highlights. So that out of the way. So there's a nice leading line that curves into the image. And then you've got this fantastic diagonal of this action and that has been, really nicely stopped with the shutter speed that's fast enough to like catch the action, make it still. It's like, if you look close, you can even see the eye, so you can get a connection with the biker. But there's a little bit of movement of the wheel, so it really kind of adds to the action, and it's very clear what is going on based on the people and the fence and the number.
Okay, and the maker is John Siebert. Travel. Okanagan Valley Orchards and Vineyards.
So I actually thought this was Italy, but I actually looked at the title and checked it, and it's actually in Canada, but it still looks like Italy to me. So, but you get a really, but wherever it is, you still get a really great sense of place. That it's like that's a vineyard, and that you're going. And going to a vineyard, it's like you're gonna have fun. But I like that, the aerial perspective of it, and you really get a chance to see the geometry of this landscape. And there's some really beautiful patterns that are created. And then there's some organic lines that kind of break it up and help draw your eye through the image. My only suggestion would be up in the upper left-hand corner. There's some strong lines from the road up there. Maybe like either bring it down or maybe clone them out a little bit. Maybe pop a little contrast. But nice.
Okay. And the maker is Jerry Thomas. This is Irish Falconer.
So I really like the position of this falcon. He gets, because he's actually, and the falcon is, the highest element in this image. So that kind of gives you more, really emphasizes that, he's, a apex predator, and that I think. But anyway, but it gives him, he's in a high place. He's gonna, he's ready for flight, and he's above that fence, which you can't keep a bird in a fence anyway. So I, for a travel plot, I don't get much of a sense of a place from here, but I think it's a, as it is, I think it's a really great shot of this, of the falcon and the falcon's relationship to his handler. And I think the detail of, I think in the left hand, I think that's like a hood that just got pulled out, or maybe it's something that he's going to throw and and have the falcon go chase down. But it's like there's the anticipation of the moment that's about to happen. So, and I think that's an makes this picture interesting.
And the photographer is Anna Woodhull. Creative category, we have one in the creative category. This is Breakfast Boredom.
Well, the title of this gives it a sense of what it might be about, because otherwise I think it's a very mysterious photo. The subject of the three girls appear to be seen through an hourglass, as if time is running out, and there's some kind of a hurry going on. The sides or the other parts of the photograph all sort of move towards those three girls, and puts more emphasis on them. It makes you wonder if there is a story here about they're off wandering and they're late and they have to hurry. But I think that as a almost abstract, mysterious photo, this is a successful, almost street photography type of situation, and I like it very much.
And the maker is Ellen Davis. We are in manipulated but realistic. And this first one is Raw and Busy River.
So I'm not completely sure what manipulations were made, but my best guess is the color treatment, especially like in the water, where it has these really intense colors. And maybe it's the Uva, because the Uva has that really beautiful green. And so maybe this is just, just bumping that up. But I think the composition of this image works really well. For me, the main focal point is that waterfall that squeezes through those heavy plains of the rocks. And it's about a third of the way in, and then it's got a diagonal. So it really, so it'll draw your eye to that point and then through the image. I like the contrast of the soft flowing water with the hard plains and the heaviness of the rocks, and just kind of the message that, it's like even, water you can find your way through heavy things, I guess is what I get where I'm going with that. So I do feel the image is a little bit dark, and maybe the photographer can experiment with exposure, or maybe just try brightening up the waterfall and bringing down the light, bright areas of the flow of the water on the left, just a tad.
And the maker is Jim Bear. This is Dusk at the Dock.
So the horizon line in the middle, it kind of gives equal emphasis to the water and the sky, but I think that works for this image because it has a little bit of a yin-yang kind of effect. The boat's mast, it extends up past the horizon and into the sky, and not quite at the height of where, the bright, spot is in the clouds with the rays coming through. But your eye goes up, goes that spot, and the rays bring your eye back down into the water. And so they kind of keeps your eye moving up and down through the scene. So I think that adding the rays in, which I'm assuming is the manipulation, I think that was a very effective addition, and I think that really makes this image work.
And the maker is Ingrid Lockhart. This is Icy Water Curtain.
So this image has kind of a mysterious feel to it. So it's like I'm not entirely sure if it's all icicles or if it's just like water falling in streaks in a particular way. But the water gives the composition a lot of strong vertical and some diagonal lines. But it draws your eye down, and then the dark and well, this is a little lighter on the screen. But the dark edges, it does kind of draw your eye. It does draw your eye back up in to follow the lines of whether it looks like maybe it's a cave or some rock, and then then my eye gets drawn back, and I'm trying to figure out like what's behind there. Is a rock? Is there moss? So I think there's some really interesting aspects to these textures and patterns, and it almost feels like an abstract image.
And the maker is Jim Bear. Black and white category. First one is live wire.
This image really intrigued me. I think that the subject is really the movement of the animals in the dust. It's a lot of action going on. The animals seem to be very frantic in the way they're moving around, in contrast to the cowboy, who is very calm and attending to his job very in a very organized way. I love the way the light and shadow hits the face and the front of the cowboy. The photographer has chosen to make the animals pretty much in silhouette, which I think is effective to make them, really it's the action that's involved. The lines of the fence surround the action and make that, it brings your eyes back into it. And I think that's excellent. There's a lot of white sky above, which has no real purpose other than to give room. I might try cropping it a little bit down to see if that is effective, but I think it is very successful just as it is.
And the photographer is Grace Farrig. This is hand IR.
So this is a very beautiful image that is really a photo of lines and curves and textures and shapes. It's clearly a human form, but it really has a lot of texture and shape that is what draws your eye around, sort of moving around and then settling on the hands. I love the texture of the graininess of the photo. It's very artistic, and I think the tones and light are excellent. I think it's a beautiful image.
And the photographer is Daniel Chaplin. This is Mendocino Concretions at Low Tide.
So when I saw the title of this, I had to look up to see what concretion is. I'd never heard that term before, but it's basically the rock. So it's a very good photo of concretions. And I love the black and white treatment. The rocks, to me, look like some kind of creatures with their heads underwater fishing for something. But the treatment of it using the long exposure to create the water as smooth so it sets off the concretions, and the progression from the larger rocks in the front to the as it gets smaller in the background gives a lot of depth to the photo. And I think that the line of the smooth rock or of the water going around the front primary rock is very good compositional detail. I also am very happy or like the very sharp barnacles that are showing on those rocks. I think that the photographer has done an excellent job of creating this composition, and the black and white really enhances it significantly.
The photographer is Eric Engels. This is Stretch to Feel.
This figure is very well set up against the darker trees behind. So it really gives you a excellent view of the pose that is artfully created with that long gauzy piece of scarfing. There's an excellent contrast between the very hard granite rocks and the soft curves and lightness of the model and the gauzy fabric. I like the fact that the lines on the rock, the stains in the rock sort of mirror the gauzy material and lead back up to the model. The lightness at the bottom in the water, I think, helps a lot to bring the eye back in. So I think it's I'm very impressed with the agility of both the model and the photographer to get this photo out in nature as it is. And I think it's very successful.
The photographer is Douglas Hooper. This is the turn of the Turn Again Tide.
So this photo really has an interesting and I think an excellent composition leading from the rough diagonal of the rocks in the foreground with that one rock anchoring your view, and then the leading lines of the rivulets as they go out towards the water. The lighting is amazingly effective in creating showing the water in those rivulets. And I think that it's a very, again, a minimalist photograph, and I think it is very almost abstract, but you know what it is. The rivulets on the far left are very much stronger and deliberate, and I wondered if, you know, another composition different, but would be to use just the left-hand side of the photo and maybe even move that rock back over to the other side to include it, because I really like the swirling of that rivulet on the far left-hand side of the photo.
And the photographer is Ellen Davis. This is California Condor welcoming the morning sun at the pinnacles.
These rocks are wonderfully jagged and have a fantastic texture to them, as well as a compositional element that is interesting. Set against the background of the sky and the water, where you can hardly tell, or, you know, maybe I assume that's water, but maybe that's all sky behind there. It's very sets off the rocks and the condor very well. I think that catching a condor in that position is perfect, and the placement of the bird in the composition is you know, very, very pleasing and brings attention to the bird and mirrors the shapes of the rocks. There is a slight halo around the rocks, which could be easily removed in post-processing, but that's the only suggestion that I would make. I think it's a very successful photo.
And the maker is Tom Quinn. We're now in the last category, color. And this is Fairyland Fence.
So I really like this subject. This fence is really weather worn. It has a very pleasing shape, and I like there's a repetition of 3. And so it's you know, has a natural frame, you know, from the pretty flowers and the bushes of, you know, the blackberry. So yeah, so it's a very pleasing scene. What I might suggest is cropping maybe a little bit off the left, and just to, you know, because those, you know, fence, you know, bits are, you know, they're so centered, you might, you know, you just want to kind of go all the way and make it fully centered and go with the kind of the natural composition that's here. Another thing I might suggest is to like put bring up the exposure just a tad on some of the fence pieces, and then put it, you know, darken a little bit of a vignette around the edges, and then that will really, you know, bring your eye more into the fence, you know, pieces there. But yeah, very pleasing.
The photographer is Lori Woodhull. This is National Hotel 1906 Hotel Register.
So I really like detail shots like this because it really gives a personal touch to, you know, the history of a place, you know, to the hotel. I like, like the detail of the handwriting, and the style and the different book bindings and the variation in like age and texture, probably condition. And it's like, and then it makes you think like, the people that signed the register, it's like, what were their lives like? What happened to them? But compositionally, there's a lot of strong vertical lines, and I think that works very well. There's some color contrast, and I like the red, and there's some variation in it. And then the little square or the rectangular shapes, of course, they kind of are scattered throughout the book spines, and then that kind of is, it gives a repetitive shape and form to the image that is interesting. There's a bit of a bright spot on the right hand side. It looks like there's something shiny there. I would suggest bringing that down because it does pull the eye. But overall, I think this is an interesting and successful image.
And the photographer is Shelby Cohn. This is Pond Palette.
So this is like a study in this is like a write of color and textures and patterns, and it comes very close to being an abstract. But the little pads, they do, they give you a little bit of context of where this is. And then the reflection, it was very bright and vibrant, and because the focus on, because the reflection, is very soft and doesn't have sharp focus in contrast to all the plants. It kind of makes the sharp plants feel like they're floating. I mean, of course they're in water, but it kind of gives it like a surreal effect, like maybe they're floating, in another dimension or space, or there's something else that's going on. And I also don't even mind, that there's, a lot of, things kind of going off on the edges. Well, there is one little triangle on the upper right-hand side that I think distracts, but other than that, I think it's a wonderful, riotous image. So
the maker is Ed Sylvester. This is I Spy Above Me.
So this looks like it's a fun time. So the color of the sky, that reminds me a bit of like all the smoke from the wildfires, and that feels a little grim, but that in contrast is, you've got this bright, fun color of this parachute, and people are out having fun. So there's that contrast. But I like that there's this big heavy shape, at about a third of the way in on the left image, and then there's enough negative space on the right to kind of balance that out, and then there's some diagonal lines that will draw the eye through around the image, and then the two little shapes, they're about a third of the way in. Then I like that they're the shapes, they're repetitive, and you can tell that they're people out having fun. So but it's a fun image and very colorful. Nice job.
And the maker is Kathy Triolo, and that ends our presentation tonight. Well done, Ingrid and Ellen. Thank you so much. You guys did a great job, and I kept you on track. Unfortunately, rushed you. The 10 seconds rushed you through, but you did a really good job. And so thank you very much for taking your time to look at all these ahead of time and make some very helpful suggestions. So, and back to you, Rachel. Well, we will have, let me just briefly say, we have our program for next month is Jim West, Professor of Photography at Cosumnes River College. And he's going to be talking about post-processing, and is taking some of the images from our field trip members who went to Death Valley to work on and demonstrate some processing techniques. So hopefully you'll be there, and back to you, Rachel.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen, and a special thank you to Ingrid. Well done, you two ladies. All right, so just a couple. You what?
This is Ingrid's first time.
I
so-
know, that's why I say it's special, a special thank you to her. Very brave. You stepped up and did a great job. Ingrid.
Very
Yeah.
intimidating.
Yeah,
Thumbs up,
you
Ingrid.
did a great job.
So, all right, so a couple of quick reminders is our next meeting date, just mark your calendars, is November 22nd. And do especially try to join us on the day-long November workshop, November 6th, a week from next Saturday, 9 to 4. We've got some great offerings, so please join us on that day. And our video from this meeting will be uploaded in the next 2 to 3 days, depending on how long it takes to be rendered. So with that, wish you all good evening and hope everybody's got power. You've got internet if you're here, but hopefully, yes, clear skies in the next few days, I hope. So, all right, good night, everybody.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks.
Great job, Ingrid.
Thanks.